Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting of the City Plan Commission to order. Today is Tuesday, December 16th. It is 4:51 p.m. And before we begin this evening's meeting, I would like to acknowledge the recent incident on the Brown University campus. Events like this remind us how fragile life can be and how deeply violence affects not only those directly involved, but families, friends, and the entire surrounding communities. Providence is strong, vibrant, and notwithstanding incidents like the recent incident, a safe place to live. Maybe before now we thought that this couldn't or wouldn't happen to us, but like so many other places, it has. Right now, we are all a little on edge because there is so much uncertainty and missing information. Please remember to be kind. We are all doing our best, but emotions are running high. Our thoughts are with the victims, their loved ones, and everyone impacted by this tragedy. And I'd like to take a moment of silence now to honor the victims and to reflect together. Thank you. We will now move forward with our meeting and start with a roll call. Starting with Noel.
Noel Sampson. Dave Caldwell.
Charlotte Lipschitz. Viv McKenna.
Miguel Casado.
Soyan Mandrakar, DPD staff.
Bob Azar, DPD staff.
Sharon Garner, legal counsel.
And I'm Michael Gazdacko, chair. We have minutes from the November 18th, 2025 meeting that have been circulated and drafted for your review and approval.
Move to accept the minutes.
And do we have a motion? We have a second. There's a motion to approve the minutes as drafted. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The minutes pass. Next, we have been circulated with a draft calendar for the meeting scheduled for 2026, because this is the last meeting of 2025. And I had a suggestion to change the July meeting from July 21st to July 14th, but otherwise the meeting schedule as drafted and circulated.
Yeah, commissioners, there are updated draft calendars which show the July 14 dates.
We'd be looking for either a motion to approve or further edits to that calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the calendar for the 2026 meeting date.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion on the table to approve the 2026 meeting schedule. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Then the meeting schedule is approved. Now, we are on to the director's report. It's something we like to do at the closeout of every year, but we'll start with Bob first to see if there's anything aside the year, besides the year-end closeout, the year-end review that Lev puts together that he'd like to address.
Just that I apologize for the video. We're having a little problem with our camera. We can't get it to stop moving. So apologies in advance if that's annoying to people online. But yes, all we have today for the director's report is our planner, Lev Simon, who does a great job of keeping track of our stats of all the development projects that are happening in the city, all the ones that go through this body, and also the other bodies, the Downtown Design Review Committee, the Historic District Commission, and importantly, those projects that get reviewed administratively as well. So go ahead, Lev. Just make sure you're speaking to that mic.
Absolutely. Commissioners, hello. I am here this December, as I have been for the last several Decembers, like Bob said, to give you the update on the status of City Plan Commission counting statistics from the year of 2025. So This year we have seen, I have written here 92, but actually, even in the time since I compiled the bulk of this report 1 week ago, we have collected several more, or on this page at least, 92, what we call CPC cases, which is all land development projects and all subdivisions counted together. Now we're up to 95. It's my expectation that we will reach at near or even at 100 cases by the time that we get to the end of the calendar year, which would reflect the most CPC cases that we've had in a calendar year since before the financial crash of 2008. So I think we haven't gone over 100 since 2006. So it's been a very, very brisk year, particularly for minor subdivisions. So here, my top number here is 23 administrative subdivisions. That's a pretty low number compared to recent years. The 62 minor applications, including 47 administratively reviewed subdivisions, however, is a massive departure. This is due in large part to the work that you guys have done to update subdivision law to make it, in many cases, easier and more practical to do. This is definitely something that developers in the city have taken and ran with, which has been reflected in the stats from this year and likely in the stats of many years to come. So in terms of things reviewed by you guys, you reviewed 6 minor land development projects and only 1 minor subdivision. Again, a huge sea change. I'm sure that many here in this room recall the days of minor subdivisions coming to the City Plan Commission with great frequency. This year, only a single one that only made it to this board due to its request for unified development review. In fact, this year, we've also changed, you guys have changed more accurately, the rules for minor land development projects. In the past, every single minor land development project would have been reviewed by the City Plan Commission. But this year, some have been reviewed administratively. As a matter of fact, 9 LDPs minor have been reviewed administratively than were reviewed by the CPC, only 6. In addition, the City Plan Commission reviewed 7 or received 7 major applications, of which you reviewed 6. One of those was received back in 2023. And as always, there is a battery of other things that make it before the board as well, or the commission, I should say, including 13 city council referrals, 7 zone, which encompass 7 zone change requests, 5 ordinance text changes, and a street abandonment back in the early portion of the year. There have also been 2 IMPs, 1 for PC and 1 for Brown University Health, and several major changes, 4, which I believe is a recent maximum for major changes seen in a year. In terms of the things that you guys have approved, you have made it to 304 units thus far approved, not including the results of tonight's meeting. We have an additional 355 units on the docket. I believe that that is the number. So if that is granted some sort of approval, obviously that would have an impact on this year's total stats. But these are 7 total major and minor land development projects to contribute to the 304 residential units approved thus far. In terms of total units approved in some form, including the minor changes, it bounces up to alternatively 305 or 297. Of course, there was one major change that reduced units. That would be the major change at 116 Waterman, where the number of units went down to 8. This has also been a very brisk year for the CPC in terms of non-residential projects, certainly the briskest in terms of the years that I have been present working for the city. In some form, the board considered 8 different projects in this category, including many, many schools, but also the DPW shed and a business park and an underwater cable storage facility. It's been very brisk for you guys in terms of non-residential projects with a real emphasis on institutional projects. But perhaps the real highlight is what has been done not at the CPC, what has been handled in-house for the first time ever. Certain minor land development projects have been handled by the administrative planning staff. And this year, we are at 317 residential units approved through this pathway, which you may note is actually higher, at least thus far, than the number of units approved by the board itself. So a major change, that's not meant to be a pun. But definitely a real sea change compared to how things have been done in years past versus this year. To cover just lightly some of the statistics from construction writ large in Providence for this past year, We have seen 703 permitted units this year. What's interesting about that number is that it doesn't have any particularly large projects contributing. The largest project within that 703 figure is only 48 units at 663 Admiral, which was permitted this year. Other than that, it's been everything smaller. In fact, to reach that 103 number, more than ever so slightly, more than half of the units have been added from small projects, just little projects that add 1 to 3 units apiece. Just through that pathway alone, that was contributed to 354 units, which is, I think, again, a testament to how the land development laws have changed just in the very recent past in this city to allow for subdivision of small lots, to allow for the creation of new accessory dwelling units, all things that can make these little projects much more possible in ways that they didn't used to be possible just 1 or 2 years ago. I actually wanted to call out ADUs specifically. There have been 44 approved this year, which has to be the most in Providence history. You can compare it to last year where there were approved only 10, and the year before that where there was only a single one. So this has really skyrocketed. And of course, the ADU number reflects many different things. It's both the creation of new units, the conversion of garages, basements, new constructions, the legalizations of existing units within dwellings that have already been built. It's many different things, but still, it's a major change to the status quo of development in the city. And it contributed to definitely a meaningful percentage of the units created in the city this year. In terms of COs, we made it to, I've actually mixed up these numbers here. 686 is the number that should be right here. I can actually change it because this is an active Word document. 686 units granted certificates of occupancy this year, slightly higher than last year's where we made it to 634. For every statistic that I had mentioned thus far, I also wanted to just give a little 2024 comparison down below, where you can see just about across the board, we have slightly exceeded our totals from last year. There were only 630 some odd residential units permitted in 2024, and on down the line, it's been just a little bit better in 2025. One other thing I want to show specifically on the units, it's cool to get the numbers, but it's also fun to see where the units have come from, prepared a map to that effect where you can see where in town all these units are being added. So as you can see, it's been a quiet year in the downtown core and in some of the first spring neighborhoods, but as you go further away, land values get lower, there's more available land to buy, and the rate of development activity increases dramatically. All of these little dots represent individual projects. If it's a yellow dot, it's small, and as the dot gets redder, the project gets larger. So you can see some of our largest projects over here permitted this year. These were a couple buildings going up on Gano Street. This over here is the 663 Admiral project that I mentioned earlier. So in terms of an actual physical development pattern that you can look at and it resembles a pattern, here it is. Just one other thing to say, and that is where we are in terms of our development project pipeline. This is something that myself and Bob and Choyan attempt to keep track of successfully. Attempt is maybe the wrong verb, but all of these large projects that are going on in the city that are deserving of special consideration from the City Plan Commission and from us. These get put into our development mapper and are shown to the public. So we're always trying to see where these things are. There are right now 95 projects that have reached that certain threshold of being large enough to include on the development mapper. And that represents almost 4,000 units, 3,889, 541 of which are affordable, and almost 250,000 or 100,000 square feet of commercial real estate. So that is the state of things. Feel free to ask me any questions during or after the meeting, but yeah, that is what the CPC has done this year and the state of the housing statistics of Providence for 2025.
Thank you very much, Lev. That was great. Any questions for Lev before he steps down? All right, thank you very much. One note before we dive into the first agenda item, we are going to reorder the agenda. We are going to swap agenda items 2 and 3. So it's going to be 1101 Elmwood Avenue. Then we're going to go into the development and subdivision review regulations, and then we're going to end with the 27th East River Street agenda item. So first up is case number 2025-13 DPR. It's 1101 Elmwood Avenue.
And I'd like to ask, is anyone from represent the applicant here? So commissioners, a quick introduction.
Can you come up to the table, please?
So commissioners, just a quick introduction. This is a request for a design waiver, and from the regulation that no residential use be located within 20 feet of a main street. And in this case, it is a building on Elmwood Ave that has been constructed as a mixed-use building and used as mixed use in the past, but has now seen the two commercial units on the ground floor become vacant. The applicant's here because they're requesting a waiver to convert those commercial spaces to residential. And so I think the applicant's here, they can just give us a quick summary of what they want to do.
Yeah, it was just, the plan is just really.
If you want, take the
Microphone.
mic, just,
Yeah,
and also say your name.
yeah, so my name's Josh Agostini. Yeah, we're just seeking, this, application here to convert these over to residential just because of, recent issues with really trying to find tenants on the commercial side for that space. Yeah, just think it'd be a little bit more, a better function and usability of the space if it was converted over to residential.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
What was it a restaurant or what was the last use of the commercial space?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Yeah, so we actually, just became part of this project recently.
Do you know what size apartments are gonna be, how many bedrooms?
It would be, yeah, we have a set of plans here, so it'd just be one unit, with a two-bed apartment.
This represents just a portion of the building, right? What we're
Exactly.
looking at. What's happening on the rest of the first floor there?
All existing as is right now, that's.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Yeah, so that's a residential unit as well right now, so it would all remain as is. This would really just get converted over entirely residential.
We're not sure on this, but I mean, I think arguably this might have been residential from day one and that portion of it converted to commercial.
At some point,
Just looking at the building.
right?
Yeah.
I would be surprised by that.
There's the other. There's the other section of the building, not front, Elmwood. How it's laid out, I don't.
No, it does. It's just it's existing, so he's not trying to pull a permit to do that, I assume, right?
Exactly.
Sorry, this is not conforming because of.
That would be, yes, the residential that's there now is non-conforming, because that rule is relatively new. So
This has to do with the bedroom within 20 feet of the.
it's residential use within 20 feet of the property line along the main street.
And Elmwood Ave is defined as a.
Elmwood Ave is one of those main streets. Yep.
This is right near, like, the off ramp, right by Roger Wiggins Park.
Mhm.
the building that we did over, where we talked about water business. Which one was
Correct, I think.
Waterman and Brook,
Yeah.
yep.
went the other way, that's right? No. Commercial to residential, that kind of thing.
That was that was new construction and they did have some space that wasn't residential. It was like common space that they converted to residential.
Oh, yeah, right.
And to Commissioner Quezada's question, it looks from old photos that this was a small cell phone store at one point.
Cellular World and Boost Mobile.
I tried to look it up and I can't find the La Roca restaurant, but that's actually across the street. So I don't know if they were there prior to or not, because that's the address that came up, but I didn't see the cell phone.
Then it looks like there was a little market there at one point as well.
I'm sorry, you say it's pretty recent? How long have you had it and what, in your market efforts, what kind of
I don't actually own this. We're just general contractor on this.
Oh,
Representing him. I don't know how long, I think he's under for about, I want to say 5 to 7 years. And I know he said he's tried to list it in the past, and he struggled with finding tenants there.
It does appear that there was a rotating list of tenants throughout the years. Tailor shop,
Yeah, Taylor Shop. and-
small store, cell phone store, that kind of thing.
Are we opening anything up by doing this? Or
I don't think so. I mean, this is one of those waivers that we reserved for you. And this stretch of Elmwood Avenue has a mix of mixed use buildings and strictly residential buildings. Elmwood, a couple of miles long, it's all commercially zoned. I don't, in my opinion, I don't think that this location is critical to have a commercial storefront.
very well.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like I said, there's a mix, there's some auto repair, there are a fair number of large multifamily houses on this, in this vicinity. So I don't really, it doesn't feel to me like it's critical that there be commercial here.
I don't have a problem with the idea, just because it's the first one that we've seen for 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it doesn't set any precedent like that, and it's a unique situation. Let's hear the staff report, and then we can open to public comment.
Sure, and commissioners, as you've seen, this building is already existing. The changes are gonna be to the interior with no little changes expected on the exterior. And therefore, we don't see a negative effect on neighborhood character, especially as we've discussed how this area is residential with some commercial uses. So based on that, we would recommend that you grant requested waiver, design waiver.
Okay, it's a public hearing, so at this point, we open this up to public comment. If you're here to speak on agenda item number 1101 Elmwood Avenue. You're here in the physical room, please raise your hand or come up to the podium. If you're here in our virtual world, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you are calling it. And seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of this agenda item. I mean, it does kind of look like it was built as a residential building at some point and it's converted over. I don't have an issue with this. I'm okay. I don't think anyone feels strongly in another position, willing to have a discussion, but it seems pretty benign as far as the things we see.
Yeah, I think as long as it's not setting a precedent, I feel pretty strongly about this being a good move in general. And I think this particular site is a really tough site regardless of program. And so I guess on this particular site, I would opt in favor of something that can be filled rather than something that's gonna sit empty. But I feel very differently about other sites on Main Street, so I think, yeah.
I think that's an absolutely fair opinion. If there's no other discussion, I guess you look for a motion on this item one way or the other.
Make a motion that we grant the design waiver request.
Based on the discussion and the
Staff report.
staff report. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll go around and do a vote. Noel? Aye. Dave?
Aye.
Charlotte?
Aye.
Sid? Miguel?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Best of luck.
Thank you.
And again, we're gonna skip over agenda item number 2 at this time. We'll come back to it after agenda item number 3, which is the Development Review Regulations Public Hearing on the amendment of the Commission's Land Development and Subdivision Review Regulations.
Okay, I will introduce this one. So the state General Assembly, as you know, has amended the Zoning Enabling Act and the Land Development and Subdivision Act several times over the past few years. And we are catching up to that in the development review regulations. We have proposed a number of changes. Almost all of them are responses to state law. There are a couple that we included just to clarify, like the what projects are subject to land development review versus development plan review, which projects are subject to formal versus administrative development plan review. And we've made some updates with respect to development plan review in the D1 district. The Downtown Design Review Committee had previously it had its own regulations with its own findings and such. Because we have now refashioned that as development plan review and the state law has changed around that, we've updated these regulations to include those findings. And then there were a couple of errant references to extensions of approval, and we felt like there needed to be some clarity around the date when a project is considered approved for purposes of appeals and such. So we've updated that. And then there was some language about precedence of approvals with other permitting authorities. The only permitting authority now where that is relevant is the Historic District Commission, since there used to be language in there about the zoning board and the city plan commission, but now that you can be a zoning board to consider unified development review, we struck that kind of thing. And then most importantly, we updated all of our checklists. These are the checklists that are provided with the applications, all the items that have to be submitted for us to do a complete review of a project, everything that is required for us to find that a project submission is complete. And the state law is very clear that the only way that we can certify something incomplete is if they don't submit something that's in a checklist. So we beefed up our checklist, frankly, and one of the most important things we put in there was language about zoning compliance. We want, I think, justifiably to be able to say that a submission is incomplete if it doesn't either comply with the zoning ordinance or the applicant hasn't identified all of the items that are necessary to come into compliance with zoning. Incidentally, this is the kind of thing that we typically review with developers when we have pre-application meetings. The state, in its wisdom, has decided that pre-application meetings are optional. And it can only happen if the applicant requests them. So be it. But if there's no pre-application meeting and there's no understanding of what the rules are, and someone submits something that doesn't comply, we will mark it incomplete. Importantly, another big thing that we're doing here relates to lot mergers. Previously, well, today we require for any subdivision of land, including mergers. Mergers are considered a subset of administrative subdivision. We have required a plan drawn by a surveyor. Whenever a lot line is being moved or a new lot line is being introduced, we require a class 1 survey. That's standard. That's going to stay the way it is. For mergers, we have allowed for what's called a class 4 survey, which is more of a records review. But we found that even that has been a major burden for a lot of people. Today, we've got a lot of folks who are looking to merge their lots because their assessments have skyrocketed. And when there are people who have a house on one lot and a side yard that's another lot, the assessments for those side lots have, in some cases, tripled because the land is so valuable and in such high demand for development. So first of all, surveyors are really hard to find. And second of all, they're very expensive, even for these class 4 plans that used to cost in the hundreds of dollars. Now they're costing thousands if you can get them. So we've done a survey of other communities in Rhode Island, and we've found that there are some communities that allow for mergers to happen without a plan drawn by a surveyor. So that's what we're proposing. We're still going to make findings of zoning compliance. The approval is still going to get recorded. It's going to be reflected on the map. The only thing is that, and there's still going to be a plan that gets recorded, but it's going to be a plan that we draw, and it's simply going to reflect the lot area of the two lots. So that's what we're proposing, and we've gotten a lot of very positive feedback so far, as you might imagine, on that proposal. So that said, everything else is absolutely what the state is requiring us to do. We pulled in just about all this language verbatim from the state law. There are two things I want to draw to your attention. Two little categories of mistakes. One is that in a couple of places where we've been using track changes, the numbering got a little messed up. So in some places there's redundant numbers or numbers that get skipped. We'd like your permission to just do that edit when we accept the changes. The other thing is that there was something odd that happened in our checklists. And this relates to the language about zoning compliance. You'll see in 3 or 4 places that language had been added and then taken out. And I'm showing it here on the screen. This is on page 50. This is that language that says we want demonstration of zoning compliance. or a cover letter plainly identifying any zoning deficiencies, et cetera, et cetera. You'll see that it's both underlined and struck out. For some reason, the conversion from Word to PDF struck that out. That's not supposed to be struck out. So that appears again a handful of times. That language is supposed to be new and it's not supposed to be struck out. So we'd like your if you see fit to approve this, we would make that edit as it appears in a few different, here it is again on page 55. A couple times on page 55. But that's it. Other than that, I think everything is fairly self-explanatory, and I'm happy to take any questions.
There were two other edits that I sent along to you. One was the effective date.
Oh, yes,
And
yes.
then on page 65, the title for that checklist needs to be checklist for DPR final plan.
Yes, okay. I apologize. Yeah, so we'll correct the date here. That's the last page of the regulations proper before we get into the appendices. And then there was that final plan checklist for development plan review. It inadvertently says land development project. I think minor land
development project.
Yeah,
final
so we will correct that as well.
But otherwise, I thought it was all well put together, and aside from those copy edits that I have understood each and every one.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
quick question about on the cover page. What number is it where you talk about the mergers?
Oh, it's that's back on the subdivision checklist.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
I didn't go into that detail. I just said that we put new checklists,
That is
but it's gonna,
Okay,
but
where the subdivisions are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's not covered on that spreadsheet.
It
So,
simply says that
yeah,
mergers are required to have a survey or something along
No,
those
it's fine.
lines.
Get that. I just
Yeah.
didn't see it on this, so I wasn't sure if I was missing it.
right. So we say, you can see here, this is the first checklist for administrative subdivision. Item number 4 says for lot mergers only, a land survey is not required.
Any other questions for Bob before we open up to public comment? This is a public hearing. We can obviously come back and have more discussion after.
It's about the regulations and not about projects.
Okay, the staff report is discussing exactly what Bob said, so I don't know that we need to.
Yeah, I can just summarize quickly. So these regulations, you need to find consistency with the comprehensive plan. So we've outlined in the staff report several sections of the plan that are pertinent to this, including language from the built environment, economic development, housing, and land use sections. And consistency with the zoning ordinance. There are a number of items in section 101 of the zoning ordinance where this is consistent. So given that, we recommend that you approve and adopt the amendment to the development review regulations, finding conformance with the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan. This is your approval for your regulations. This does not need city council approval.
Okay, with that, it is a public hearing, so if there's anyone in the room that would like to speak on this matter, again, this is agenda item number 3, the development review regulations. And if you're joining us in the virtual room, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you'd like to speak again on the development review regulations. Are you want to grab, can you grab the microphone real quick? We have Mr. Dalgarian in the audience who would like to speak.
Thank you.
Greenfield Gary, 28 Street in Providence. I just have two requests. One, if I could have a copy of the packet provided for the item three, the board members. And so I could. Yeah. And two, if I have a copy of the comprehensive plan, the 2014 comprehensive plan. Long money on your bill last year. I appreciate that. But that's all. Thank you.
Okay. I think the former we'd be able to give you this evening after we're done with this, but I don't know about the latter. That would take some
Yeah.
to print it out.
Yeah, I don't know if we have
I can
any,
give you a copy of,
I don't know if we have a printed copy of the, number, he's asking for item number 3.
yeah,
Yeah, this is item number
Yeah.
3.
so I can give you a copy of, well, actually, we don't have printed copies of
Yeah,
them.
we didn't distribute printed
I
copies.
printed my own, and marked it up. Which is why I have a printed copy here. But we asked the commissioners to not waste paper to bring electronic devices this evening so that we didn't print a whole bunch of them. So
We'd be happy to sell you copies of the regulations and the comprehensive plan. I think we charge 15 cents a page.
and then, is there anyone else here in the room who would like to speak on this matter? All right, we do have a hand raised in our virtual room.
Okay, Susan Rogers, are you raising your hand to speak about the development review regulations?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Susan, are
Can you
able
hear me?
to
See, the
speak?
little microphone looks like it's moving.
Yeah,
There's-
all right, let's try this. Hold on one sec. Promote to panelist.
You want to try again?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Okay, bear with us just for a
Okay.
minute.
Yep.
We see that you're talking, but we can't hear you, so just hang in there 1 minute.
Okay, try again, Susan.
Okay. I just have one question.
Yes,
I understand the checklist is being redone, and all of that, and what you're doing, particularly about if people want to merge their two lots. But is there a new application form being developed, or do you use the same application form that's currently out there?
we're gonna update the application form with the new checklist. But if you wanted to file something, the application, I think the checklist for the mergers is gonna be pretty much the same. I don't think we made significant changes there, but if you're interested in filing for an administrative subdivision, by all means, give the planning department a call and we'll walk you through the process.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in our physical or virtual room who wishes to speak on this matter? If so, please raise your hand or virtual hand. And seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of this agenda item. Well, I hope you all have read this with as much gusto as I have over the past week. Bob always probably appreciates getting my call either the Friday or the Monday before our meeting with my little copy edits. Every time we have one of these documents that goes out. But yeah, I think I'm ready to adopt it with the changes that we just discussed. I'm open to discussion. To anyone else that has suggestions or edits on the draft document that's been circulated. Now we take a motion to approve.
And recommend that we approve, for the discussion and testimony provided to us today to adopt the amendment to development review regulations, find conformance with the zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We'll go around and do a vote. Noel?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Charlotte?
Aye.
Sid?
I,
Miguel?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Right. On to our last agenda item, which is agenda item number 2, being heard in the number 3 position. This is a minor land development project for case number 24-041 MI 27 East River Street.
Commissioners, I'll provide a quick introduction while the applicants are making their way. Okay. So this is a project that you would remember from last year when the applicant was before you. They wanted to construct housing on the site of East River Street with internal parking. You had conditionally granted certain dimensional adjustments that they had requested as they wanted to be able to develop a project within those parameters. So now they're here with a plan that has been developed within those adjustments, the limits of those adjustments that you granted. And you will notice that the design has changed slightly from the last time that they were before you. And so the plan today that's before you has 355 residential units with 281 internal parking spaces, which is an increase from what you saw last time. And when they were last before, you asked them to come back and present on certain items. And those would include documenting of community outreach, exploring ways to reduce the parking ratio, bring it closer to 1-to-1. And also talk about their traffic study as well as the CRMC's findings. So they are here and we'll be talking about the project, its design, as well as addressing your requirements from the last time around.
Okay, before we let the applicant take over, we'd like to note that Dave Caldwell has recused himself from this agenda item. With that, we can you guys can take it away.
Is there anybody who's going to present from their computer?
2 of us, myself and Peter Friedrichs.
Okay. Okay, so I'll promote both of you to panelist. And just make sure whoever's talking is using the microphone, please.
And don't all talk at once.
You're not using the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Dylan Conley on behalf of the applicant. I have here with me today, Dustin Zuby and Kevin Diamond, principals of Providence Group, and of this project. Bob Clinton from VHB will speak to the traffic issues, and Ryan Font from GBA will speak to the stormwater matters. Online, I have Peter Friedrichs, also from my firm, and he will be speaking as the land use development expert, land use code. So just sort of briefly, I think as mentioned, this was this plan's been updated since you last saw it. Those updates are a result of follow-up work we did in the community. We had 2 community meetings, and also just sought feedback from other organizations, stakeholders, RIDEM, CRMC. So what you see in front of you is what we were able to do as a result of the conditional approval of dimensional adjustments. We could go out into the community, coordinate with the state, and sort of update based on all of those recommendations. So from here, I would love to create this way to do this. Kevin will give a presentation on the actual design of the building itself. And I will do my best to navigate the Zoom from here. So Kevin, if you just wanna, as you go through, let me know what page you want me to be on, and I'll just kind of keep clicking through.
Not that loud talking about that, like.
Excellent. Good evening, everybody. Thank you everyone for your time tonight. I'll try to keep this short and sweet. I think everyone's fairly familiar with this project because this is our second time back before you all. And you know, overall, we're incredibly excited about this project. What we see here, more than just a project, is a vision for something really special for Providence, taking a site that has been long neglected and overlooked, one that is contaminated from prior use, that has the real ability to create an amazing connection to the waterfront from the east side, not just for people who would live in that building, but to the public, by creating walkways and kayak launch, things like that. So we see in this site something very special, an incredible node that connects this special area to the waterfront. Since we've been before your group, we've been working very hard internally in our own architectural studio, collaborating with many other external groups, some of which are next to me here, traffic consultant, a member from GZA's engineering firm, and many others who are not with us tonight. And it's been a very iterative process. Shortly after being heard before your board here, we held 2 large format community meetings with Councilor Gonzalez, and they were both very productive, very helpful. The very first meeting we had really launched right into the design that we had most recently that you all saw, that was sort of an industrial looking building with lots of brick and steel looking windows. You know, it was very different than what you see in front of you today. We were excited about it, but we obviously know that to make something special, building this big, it's not something that's created in a vacuum. It's with lots of feedback, and especially from folks who are going to live here. So we've had really successful community engagement meetings, and during those meetings, we were, you know, really focusing on different concerns we heard from folks in the neighborhood, concerns, comments, requests. As you can imagine, it's a lot of information to synthesize. So things we were hearing were things about the building height, the unit count, parking availability, impact on neighborhood character, traffic and congestion, and environmental impact. Those were the main thrusts of neighbors' feedback and concerns during the meeting. And we took those feedback points and we held another community meeting where the design was completely turned on its head, reimagined completely. In fact, what we showed to them was very different than the original scheme, so much so that we made the conversation less about materials, more about form, and more about massing what the building is actually doing. For example, to address the concerns of building height, right on the corner there, the roundabout, the building actually dropped by 10 feet, over 10 feet, which is pretty substantial for a mid-rise building like this. And that is where the pedestrian experience is probably greatest. That's where you would really be looking at this building. So for many feet off the corner, that lower height is compressed down. We've also taken the building mass and we've compressed it in its width. It's a narrower footprint when you think about the entire development, not just the building itself, but drive aisles, parking spaces. The actual impervious portion of the building has been compressed considerably. So what that does is it really changes the experience of the building from the back. So when you're on the waterfront looking at this building, you don't just see cars and parking garage, you see the building. And the parking is completely concealed inside of this building footprint. It was really complicated for a building like this that is on a contaminated site when you're dealing with civil exports and things like that. So it's been a major Rubik's Cube, which what gets Dustin and I each out of bed in the morning, I think, and our team as well. We really enjoy those challenges. But it's been a challenge because we've had to think about how do you conceal parking, because that's what we heard. We heard that a lot from people in the neighborhood. We don't want to look at parking. We don't want to look at parking. I don't want to walk by and see the back of a Honda Civic. I don't blame you. So we've reimagined the building so that what you see are actually townhouses. So wrapping right around, if you go sort of to the one of the earlier renderings in the set, we've taken the feedback quite literally, and not only do we screen the parking, I think a lot of folks, you know, when you're developing a building at a larger scale like this, there are certain screening systems you might deploy, like a green wall or a slat wall. We actually did with architecture. So we've taken the typology of a townhouse, almost like a brownstone, and rotating it 90 degrees so that it runs a long ways along the street front with its own individual stoops that open right up to East River Street. So not only is the parking concealed, but you're creating an experience along East River Street that's very pedestrian, that's very human scale. But what's more human scale than the walk up to residence? What's more Providence, right? So that's something that we were really excited to sort of solve by moving the parking inward and basically running an abandoned houses along the exterior. So it really solves many problems at once. So in addition to stepping the building down on top by 10 feet, thinning up the entire profile and pushing all the parking internally. I shouldn't say all parking, there's some on the very end by our loading at the end where there's some spaces, but it's minimal compared to what we had locally. So we've addressed those comments. Also through thinking through the parking design much more critically since we've been here last, we've found a way to handle parking in a much more elegant way that I think solves the congestion concerns that a lot of the neighbors said. In terms of neighborhood character, we were told, don't try to make this an industrial building. Don't try to make this look like it's an old mill or an old warehouse been here for 100 years. So we reimagined the building to be very 2025, or I should say 2026 at this point. That it's trying to be, you know, I would say, have a brick facade at the ground level, but past that sort of band, everything slips up to like a very sleek metal composite building with lots of glass. And I think it's a very unabashedly contemporary at a certain point, which I think is what people want to see, a building that's honestly of its. So obviously we're still at the preliminary plan review. So I'm not yet in a position to talk about what type of tanlin strips we're going to use for the connectors. We can hash that out a bit later. But we are starting to back into a pretty fleshed out design at this point. So the final piece was environmental impact. That's something that is we have Ryan here with UZA. He talked a little bit about that in terms of our stormwater management, and that's been the focus of some of the questions we've had so far leading up to this. We've thought very deeply about it, and we're going to continue our conversation with the CRMC as well, which obviously they're going to care a lot about the environmental impact on the site. But overall, I would say the entire DNA of the building has changed, opening the door to a much more sensitive environmental impact in that we've thinned up the building. There's a lot more pervious surface in the rear of the building, opposed to impervious, without drive aisles, without parking stalls along the back of the building. It's not only more environmentally friendly, but it's just more attractive. So it's something that we've thought a lot about. And then finally, I believe some new additions since we've been before your board here. We've added a kayak launch along the rear of the building. And then the urban coastal greenway has been developed quite a bit to be accessible for everybody. So we've got a real public amenity that meets the waterfront. We've got guest parking, so folks can come out from the community. If you don't live there, you can park your car, you can pack a picnic, you can grab your kayak, your frisbee, and go hang out on a site that's historically been just completely overlooked and forgotten about.
Back over.
A microphone?
You.
For the record, and to have people at home or in virtual rooms be able to figure out what's going on.
I appreciate it, and I probably will need a few more reminders as it might go, so don't be shy.
Have you ever known me to be shy?
So the structure of our presentation, we're gonna walk you through on an element by element basis what we need in order to achieve each of the approvals, and we're gonna have specific findings as to each from our team of experts here. But you know, just sort of reiterating and framing based on Kevin's presentation. So you're talking about environmental remediation of the site. You're talking about creation of new public waterfront access at the end of a transit and a growth corridor. You're high density residential without abutting neighbors. In fact, the only abutters that we arguably have, the only other property owner anywhere in the area was the seller. We acquired this land from them. There's a significant amount of green space in the area, including the green space that we are adding to the area through the kayak launch in coordination with the CPC. The previous approval was for a 50% reduction in parking with a hope that we could kind of be creative on finding additional ways to provide parking on the site. So the 50% reduction, we are very close to a 50% reduction in zoning compliant parking spaces at 186, but we are capable of parking 284 cars. So that's a dramatic increase in our on-site parking compared to our previous iteration. Some relevant history and travel, we have a CRMC preliminary determination. We had the CPC preliminary plan approval specific to those dimensional adjustments. That was back on October 15th, 2024. The remainder preliminary plan was continued. Again, that was to do things like community meetings, the traffic study, the DEM remedial action work plan. All those things have been done. Check, check, check when we come back, right? And all the design alterations were based on the above, which I think was sort of the intent of that previous approval. You know, here's the flexibility, go flesh this out, go work with the rest of the community. We've done that and we're here. So we're very excited about the product that we have in front of you. So the specific relief that we need tonight are, again, the findings that we've conformed to those conditional approvals of the dimensional adjustments, specifically the additional 15 feet in height and the 50% reduction in parking pursuant to 1904E and preliminary plan approval pursuant to 452360A. So on the dimensional adjustments, I'm gonna try to bring in Peter Friedrichs here. And thankfully we don't need to share a mic because he's on the other side of town, but does he have the ability to speak while I have the presentation up?
Peter,
Hear me?
yeah, we got you, Peter. Go ahead.
All right, great.
So Peter, if you just want to walk us through specific to dimensional adjustments, I think you can see the screen up here, the applicable zoning standards for 1904E1. You know, where we are in your professional opinion, and the open space and structured parking in particular. The board of it.
Yes, you got it. So, the commission's probably familiar with this. And I think your staff has presented on this several times, including in the staff report in front of you. The CPC is allowed to make dimensional adjustments through the land development project process that's authorized by section 1904E1 of the Providence zoning ordinance. That was recently revised since the October 2024 meeting, but the effect is the same, and there are certain conditions where this is permitted. There were two selected by the CPC at that October 2024 meeting, so we're bringing those back to your attention. That is 1904E1A, where open space is permanently set aside for public or common use. It's been talked about with this project that there will be public water access and the shared use path along the water at the site, and there will also be the provision of structured parking on the property.
Peter's findings regarding the most recent application are consistent with the board's and DPD's findings as for a previous application, and also consistent with the most recent staff report, which I imagine Troy will go through maybe in some more detail later. The applicable development standards for finding these dimensional adjustments, this is ERR standard 1005B, and this is the limit on the height and parking adjustments are an additional 24 feet, not to exceed 2 stories, and a 50% reduction in parking. We need to be within that. We are in both cases. It's an additional 15 feet in height, and that 50% reduction in conforming parking spaces. That's something we're still seeking. I won't belabor the point, but the details here, the findings are again consistent. Our expert, previous staff, previous board, present staff findings. I think I want to spend 1 extra minute on the reasonably relatedness for both the height and for the parking. Peter, if you can beat it off with how the dimensional adjustment for the additional height is reasonably related to the structured parking and additional green space on the site?
Yes, exactly. Just that. So that allows an efficient building, so that the public subsidy necessary to create this development is diminished. This is a large development that will create a positive impact on the housing crisis, provide much needed housing supply for the city.
Then
There's
again,
also, yep, the site topography is such that it challenges some of the buildable areas of the site in addition to the waterfront nature to it. So these adjustments allow the development that supports the programming of the building. And then similarly with parking, with the added caveat that this is on the East Coast Greenway, it's on a major transit route, and has great access to the Henderson Bridge and the east side through the adjacent streets.
Peter, if you could specifically address the concept where in order to get structured parking and in order to accommodate the additional green space, you know, how those things push and pull against each other, so that, you know, we have to go up in height a little bit. We did a reduction in parking because all of those things push and pull sort of the three-dimensional space of what is buildable and what isn't buildable.
Right. So, CRMC is protecting the waterfront and areas immediately adjacent to it. There's city zoning that affects that as well. And then within all this, you've got grade change from south to north and trying to fit in the required parking, the desired parking, all of the public comments that have been received. This is the format that the design team has come up with to solve all of those issues. It does require these two adjustments.
I think one of the ways I like to think about it, Chairman, to use a bit of an analogy is you have a 16-ounce cup, which can be sort of short and wide or tall and thin, right? So as you put more things on the site, you need to have some that additional height. And if you don't want to go too high in the additional height, you need to reduce some of the parking requirements, right? So by reducing the parking requirements and increasing the height, that's how we maximize the green space that we can provide. So the sort of the push and pull of the whole project is to accommodate all the interests on the bottom. The conditions of approval of the dimensional adjustments, this is something that I would be happy to circle back to if we want to walk through in more detail. But the previous approval was very express about what we need to do in order to effectuate the 50% reduction in parking and the 15-foot increase in height. We've met each of those standards. Specifically, that we needed to consider traffic study and CRMC findings. We've submitted evidence to that effect in the record. VHB's impact study, the CRMC correspondence and preliminary determination, the community outreach. We had a community meeting in October and December of 2024. We've submitted into the record proof of those meetings, the content from those meetings, and the advertising, so to speak, of those meetings, which did go through the counselors in the area, amongst other groups. And the requirement to explore ways to provide one-on-one parking. I think we'll go through the parking in some detail later on, but we dramatically increased the amount of parking that we're providing on the site relative to our initial application. And we have had conversations about other parking in the area more generally. So I believe each of those conditions have clearly been met, and there's evidence on the record to substantiate all of them. The next set of approvals that we need this evening are the preliminary plan approvals. These are sort of the classic every minor land development, every major land development, every subdivision needs to hit on each of these. Now everyone's familiar with them. We believe we've substantiated them all on record and cited to them within the presentation. Peter, if you could just start with consistency with the comprehensive plan.
So this is interesting. We analyzed this project with the previous version of the comprehensive plan 14 months ago. Have now analyzed it with the present comprehensive plan put into effect last year. Obviously, this CPC and staff are very familiar with this document. The project remains consistent with the comprehensive plan to the extent that there are any inconsistencies, those are satisfactorily addressed. I can run off a few of the quick objectives that it hits. But by and large, the city's calling for growth. This is an area where there is an opportunity for that to do that at scale, with less impact on surrounds than more populated and active parts of the city would have.
Here again, we're citing two additional findings above and beyond, expert report and testimony from Mr. Friedrichs. We have the municipal staff's expert findings from October 24, and then again, the most recent report. We're also citing to the board's decision in October 24. The next item is compliance with the zoning ordinance. I think there was a great conversation earlier tonight with the checklist and the proof of compliance with the zoning ordinance. Peter, can you just address this for us as well?
Yeah, this is very straightforward. It's not it's not looking at intangibles about, what could be. This is strictly factual. What are the requirements of the zoning ordinance? And once those two dimensional adjustments are granted, the project is in compliance with the zoning ordinance.
Here again, we're referencing the most recent staff report. I will also say that our compliance with the conditions of approval for the previous dimensional adjustments is relevant here, because that's what effectuates those dimensional adjustments. Sitting here this evening, we have submitted into the record proof of compliance with those conditions. So we're compliant with the zoning ordinance through the effectuated dimensional adjustments as well. On environmental impact, Peter, I'll have you start, and then Brian, I'm gonna hand the mic down to you so you can go through a bit of your stormwater analysis.
You want me to jump in?
Yeah, please.
Yes. So, from an overarching planning perspective, again, this was talked about 14 months ago. This is an infill site, former use that's being rehab site, and it puts development where the infrastructure already is, where it can handle the intensity of development, and it, by concentrating housing here, preserves activity in more natural areas from development.
And upon with UVA, so we've performed a conceptual level stormwater analysis for the proposed development. The conceptual stormwater design includes the construction of subsurface infiltration systems between the building and the river, rear of the building. Stormwater runoff will be collected from the building via roof leaders and downspouts and conveyed to a subsurface infiltration field. Subsurface infiltration field will be designed in accordance with CRMC, Rhode Island DEM, and City of Providence standards. Specifically, the system will need to control the rate of runoff, the runoff rate and the runoff volume in the post-development condition to ensure that they are matching or less than the existing conditions. The proposed system will also provide the required water quality treatment for the first 1 inch of runoff that comes in roof of the development. In addition, the urban coastal greenway piece of the project proposes the construction of new impervious areas via the paved walkway to manage stormwater impacts from that paved walkway. Would be a grass vegetated swale constructed along the pathway that the pathway will pitch stormwater into, and that will have some type of vegetated finish so that it's visually consistent with
Ryan, a couple questions for you. One,
A microphone.
Just to be clear, is the stormwater being managed on site, and do you believe that you're able to handle all of the stormwater on site?
Yes, that's correct. The proposed plan is to manage all of the stormwater within the existing property through the infiltration units. And if there is overflow from the infiltration units, it would not be directed into any infrastructure by the City of Providence. So it would head towards the Seacon River, although our intent is, given that very little water runs off the site in the pre-development condition, our stormwater management system will be designed to infiltrate and allow very little water to run the Seekonk River. Have you had a chance to review the site remediation plan from RIDEM and what is your opinion on how that interacts with stormwater on the site? Sure. So the remedial action work plan that was submitted to the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management in 2024 does not contain anything that, in my opinion, would prohibit the implementation of stormwater infiltration practices on the site. Is there anything in your opinion that would prevent this project from being able to comply with the City of Providence's stormwater ordinance, or more generally cause any significant negative impacts or negative environmental impacts at large? Based on the analysis that we've performed so far, it's our opinion that we will be able to design a stormwater management system that complies with both state and local regulations and creates a situation where there are no adverse impacts to neighbors. Mr. Chairman, while I'm hanging out on this side of the table, I don't know if we wanted to do some questions, our stormwater expert, or if we wanted to sort of reserve that for later on.
Dylan, I just have one question. Like, what do you mean by a conceptual stormwater management plan? Like, how does that differ from a regular plan that you submit?
Sure. So based on the size of the site with the disturbance over 1 acre and site's location within CRMC jurisdiction, a stormwater management plan that complies with the Rhode Island stormwater installation design and installation rules by DEM will need to be submitted to CRMC to be jointly reviewed by CRMC and DEM. And that application would need to include a written stormwater management plan, a sediment and erosion control plan, an operations and maintenance plan for the proposed BMPs. And it would also need to include design drawings that show both site grading, sections, and details on the proposed stormwater management BMPs. Essentially, what we've done to date is the preliminary calculations to prove that the concept of the system that we want to design will work. However, all of that additional documentation that I just mentioned will need to be submitted to state agencies and probably potentially the City of Providence. So it could be constructed.
So it's forthcoming.
Correct.
And I think it's forthcoming specifically because of the overlapping jurisdiction. I do a lot of project applications in the City of Providence. I don't know how common it is for there to be a DEM CRMC jurisdiction as well as City of Providence jurisdiction. You know, I think one of the challenges of all of these approvals, and something we've been talking about all the state law changes recently, is every party wants every other party to go first. CRMC wants you to get complete approvals elsewhere before they take a look at anything. Same thing with DEM. So to a certain extent, you do as much as you possibly can for each jurisdiction. Let the other party take a bite at the apple and come back where necessary. And I think the City of Providence's our regulations specific to what represents a minor or major modification, and the state of Rhode Island's requirements relative to state permits occurring prior to final, as opposed to prior to preliminary, are relevant, and sort of gives us a bit more clarity on the order of operations here than we may have had in years past. If there's anything else for stormwater.
It is a requirement of preliminary plan to have a stormwater plan, not a conceptual narrative, but a stormwater plan submitted at the preliminary plan phase. So that is jurisdictionally us as well, although the permitting authority will ultimately grant you the permit, which is CRMC in this instance, because it's directly adjacent to the Gulf of Waterway. Have you, GZA, have you run these numbers that you're saying completely in a model to see if what you're thinking will actually happen at this site, based on, I see your test pits, I see your soil conditions and your storage structures shown here, or proposed potential storage structures. Have you placed them in a virtual model and run the numbers to see if this actually performs the way you're saying it will?
Yes, we have. So included in the report that we submitted is a HydroCAD, hydrologic and hydraulic modeling software model output that models both the pre-development and post-development conditions.
But it doesn't have even a preliminary plan of where those structures would be, how they connect, where they would infiltrate to. I see some computer modeling, but I'm not sure what exactly that represents, and where those would be on the site, how it would work, like a normal stormwater plan would.
Yeah, so there is a conceptual stormwater management layout included on sheet BPLP.03 in the preliminary plan application figure set.
What page is that?
BP-LP.
Yeah, you're in the drawing.
It was in the drawing set. Oh, that looked like the same drawing set we had here. Let's see. LP03. Got it. Okay. They were small in your in this, so I didn't pick up that that's what it was. Yeah, while I'm looking at this, other commissioners, do you have questions for stormwatering?
I might have a really basic question about the site plan in general, just, you can back up and walk us through the gray band that you guys are, you guys know all the regulations that you're talking about regards to the waterway, but I think it would be helpful if you could back up and just walk us through the site plan and what this sort of, I can't see now, but it looks like 25-foot gray band is, and how, because that interacts with the building footprint in some places and also the sort of. It's dashed on this sheet. It's also on the survey sheets.
So. Maybe the discussion of how they begin informing the CRMC regulations about the coastal and setbacks. We're gonna need we're gonna need you to use the microphone.
So I think we just wanna pass this to our site plan. And I'll walk us through it.
I think this, you could continue it by also answering this question by also discussing the CRMC jurisdiction, the coastal waterway, and how you're going to comply both with the stormwater and the coastal waterway restrictions in this area, or your encroachments into their buffers and things like that, that we'd be curious to hear all of that.
The other scene, has jurisdiction along the waterways in certain areas, and the buffers are dictated by the type of waters. And there are a variety of paths that are permissible to follow to permit a project. And this waterway is a development site, and it is also a narrow lot, and it is also a site that has been entered into the brownfield remediation program, given its contamination with petroleum products, lead, arsenic, due to prior usage as a manufacturing site and a gas station. Each of those things has impacts on the BRC approvals. The inland coastal feature is the most southern red line, and that is where the inland coastal feature is located. We are proposing a urban coastal greenway, which is 25 feet in width. That is an offset from that inland coastal feature, and that's what we are showing here. And in that coastal greenway, we are proposing a 8-foot wide walking path along the entire coastal feature that opens up at various points for CUP corridors, areas to enjoy the outdoor space. There's going to be a kayak launch. And there's going to be access to bikes and the public, and there's going to be parking for the public. And that is within that 25-foot space. Beyond that 25-foot space is a construction setback. In the construction setback is where buildings typically are not permitted. However, where a site has environmental contamination that requires building in that footprint, the director of the CRC can grant relief. And in our case, if you look at the parking configuration that we're pursuing is very, very, very tight and specific in terms of its requirements. Because the soil itself is contaminated. So any soil that is brought off site has to be specially managed. It can't be used as alternative fill. And depending on the levels of contaminants in it, determines where it needs to be disposed of. And it could be, tested in pockets, but pockets could be required to be brought to the landfill in Johnston, and pockets could be required to be brought to the Midwest, depending on whether it meets the threshold of hazardous waste or not, or just unsuitable. So in order to minimize export and provide the level of parking that this project needs to support it, both from the zoning compliance standpoint and from a marketability standpoint, the outline of the building along the urban coastal greenway is very linear. But if you go back to the site plan, you can see that the inland coastal feature itself is not at all. It's very irregular. So one of the questions that we are asking of the CRMC is to grant us relief for building and shown in the construction zone. And you see here, I think the site plan that's colored was a clear image. Yeah. So A2O. So there is a dashed line there that shows where the building passes into the construction setback. And if the building is tracing that line. So our next step is to resubmit another preliminary determination to be heard again in front of the CRC. Review.
Okay, and just for 100% clear, so you crossed over into, it looks like it's called Zone X on the survey drawing, but that's the construction. Sorry,
I think that's related to
the construction zone.
the flood zone.
That's a FEMA.
Oh, okay. So. Okay,
FEMA, not CRC.
I see. So we're not seeing this dash line on the, it looks like
It's
it
faint.
crosses.
There's a red line, there's two red lines, and those bound the urban coastal greenway. So the one that's lower to the page is the inland coastal feature. And then north of the upper red line, there's a dashed black line.
Yeah, no, okay. So that
And that dashed black line is the construction setback. And you can see that most of the building is outside of the construction setback. And there's only
Yeah, okay,
parts
sorry.
of the southern part of the building that crosses the construction setback.
It's just strikingly
Eastern
similar
part
to
of the
the-
building.
To the zone X line,
Uh,
but yeah, I
the-
can
the-
see-
Yes,
Yeah,
the eastern portion of the building.
okay, good,
two different things.
Yeah.
Two different governing bodies. but
Got
And it could be in the one.
because of this.
Yeah, they're the correlated. They are separate.
Okay,
I honestly never thought of that until you said that, but that makes sense.
but you are allowed by right to have patios and non-building elements and stormwater structures within this zone.
Relief has been granted in the past, and we've been told that it would be supported in our past iteration, which had paving there. So in our prior CPC submittal, rather than having all of the parking contained underneath the building, we had a drive aisle that ran along the urban coastal greenway, which we told would be accepted. So that actually had a lot more impervious surface along the coastal greenway, and that's one of the things that Kevin was mentioning earlier. This iteration has much less man-made surfaces in the construction site.
Got it. Okay, I have one other question about this site plan while it's up.
Sure.
You mentioned that this area, the pathway behind the building is publicly accessible. Can you just run through, I mean, I can imagine how it is, but how you imagine the public accesses this and where they come and go?
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Sure. So on the right-hand side of the building, you can see, but the pathway right here. And the dash line represents the lot. So that will ultimately connect to the lot line. Connect to the pole. On the left-hand side of the building. There's an 8-foot walkway that between the lot line and the building. That will also connect to the public.
When you say the public right of way, you mean presently existing sidewalk?
Yes, it is true. Exactly, yep.
Exactly. So Waterman Grill is roughly here. And this is the top of the roundabout.
Mhm.
So one access point at the top of the roundabout, and then the other access point, this is where East River sort of slopes back down where we go underneath the red bridge.
That's right.
And those things labeled S on the right side. So that's the loading dock area, loading door, but what are
That stands for standard parking space.
got it. So those are public parking spaces?
2 of them will be public parking spaces.
This may be a question for GZA again, but you might be able to answer it, Dustin, is where are the majority of the contaminants in the soil here? I'm trying to figure out from the borings on the geotechnical side where they align with your site plan, but I'm having trouble finding. It looks like GZ12, GZ7 looks like it's right on the border by that existing building that's the little gift shop or something.
So the gift shop used to be a filling station,
Right,
right? So there's.
that's the petroleum,
products
there's
there.
that's
And then
the very hot area there.
away from it, there used to be a manufacturing facility. close to, the right-hand side, that's the spillway right now.
So on the exact opposite side?
On the exact opposite side. I know that the number of borings, the number of contaminants were, picked up. I don't know the exact distribution, but maybe. Ryan, is that something that? We do have a boring log that shows where everything was picked up.
Yeah, I couldn't, I can't zoom in enough to read where these logs are for. I think I found GZ7, like I said, but 12 was another one that got a nice hit of petroleum. I didn't see any other contaminants listed on the geotechnical report, so I was wondering the other contaminants.
In practice, given the volume of export for the site, we're going to be doing soil testing for every 500 tons of soil that's removed. So there's going to be testing that's done in the field at regular, because there can be findings that are different.
And then the industrial use on that side, you said you don't recall exactly, but there's some heavy metals and, yeah, exactly.
The typical contaminants that you see in
okay. Any other questions on stormwater? Before we hear anything else? Maybe now traffic?
Sure. We can jump over to traffic. I think there I want to start with VHB's consideration of the area in general, and then I want to take a minute to talk about transportation demand management plan. So there's sort of the traffic in the area, and then there's sort of the multimodal approach that we have to managing both traffic and parking. So I'll start with VHB.
Good evening. It's on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. My name's Bob Clinton. I'm with VHB Engineering. We prepared a traffic study dated August 2025. It was based on a previous iteration of these plans. The plans have evolved a little bit since then. But the results, the conclusions, the findings of that are still relevant. I guess we could maybe pull off a plan, but the traffic operations, the proposed driveways are projected to operate level service B or better. The roundabout, the mini roundabout actually doesn't operate as a roundabout. It kind of acts as a regular four-way intersection. And it's projected to operate at level service C or better during the peak periods. So that's one aspect of the project. The other aspect of the site distance, that was a concern, I think, of the board previously. We have looked at the most recent plan and the access points to the garages, the entrance exits to the garages. They meet minimum site distance requirements, the AASHTO requirements, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation officials has guidelines as far as stopping site distance, that you have to have a certain distance that you can see in both directions looking out the driveways. The other aspect of the plans, I don't know both the plans, but the loading area and the parking spaces for the public on the east end of the building, that area is going to go through CRMC. It's going to go through various
iterations, that location is gonna be negotiated. But we will ensure that that location has adequate sight distance in both directions. It's located in a position where it can meet those national standards.
Okay, so those may change. The main driveway won't, but the loading and other ancillary parking spaces may.
Correct.
Okay, just because, you know, I read through your report, I understand it. I know enough about traffic to be dangerous. Maybe just give a little brief overview for everyone here, what level of service A, B, C mean, that they're all acceptable levels of service, et cetera.
Traffic engineering is kind of like being in school. You have levels, you get a grade A, B, C, D. The only thing different in traffic engineering is that there's an E, and an F. So E and F are considered unacceptable during peak hours. Peak hours, you're able to, D is passing. We're showing that our site driveways operate at level service B, which is relatively good, minimal delay. And level service C at the roundabout location. That's for peak hour. The rest of the day is gonna operate even better than that with minimal delays.
And then that means it's just reflective of the amount of time a person has to wait at a stoplight or wait to get in or out of a driveway, et cetera.
Correct, yeah, yes.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for on traffic?
One note I did want to just sort of double down on is the initial analysis of the report. It's my understanding that that was based on all traffic being able to exit through the same level. That is no longer the case. Can you just talk to us a little about the two different levels and how that improves things?
Yeah, they're going to have assigned parking spaces, so it's not like they're gonna be driving around looking for an empty space. They're gonna have designated spaces for each unit. So there are two entrances being proposed now for the parking garage. One gets you to certain parking spaces, the other gets you to another series of parking spaces. So our analysis was based on all of the traffic leaving one exit. So actually having two exits, you're gonna be able to get in and out easier. So the delays shown in our study are the actual delays, so probably less than that. That's it, a conservative high estimation.
This may be a question for the applicant, not you, Bob, but is there gonna be any access control on these parking areas where, you know, only residents will be able to be in certain areas, go in and out of certain directions? Basically, more or less, I'm trying to figure out if people who know the site and know the surrounding streets will be the main people who are traversing these ingresses and egresses.
That's correct. There will be access control for every garage entry point into the building. And it will be facilitated by concierge services at the building. So if there are package deliveries, while an Amazon driver won't be able to access the building on their own, there's going to be 24/7 concierge. They can ship out and put them.
Here, let's talk about the traffic demand management plan.
So I think a critical component of this is we're at the end of a transit corridor. There are multimodal opportunities. There's excellent biking available in the area. There's also grocery stores available in the immediate vicinity. There's a recent announcement, I believe, that Whole Foods is expanding in the immediate vicinity. So one of the ways that we're planning on managing the traffic here is to have a 24/7 concierge, so everything is actively managed. So we have a full plan here. I'm going to have Dustin walk us through some of the sort of key points. And the other thing that I think Bob has address for us a bit briefly, right, is so there's demand, there's peak demand, there's the fact that there's good bus access in the area, and the fact that it's going to be managed by professionals as opposed to just individuals parking all their cars. All of these things start to overlay in a certain way that sort of decreases the intensity and the inefficiency that is sort of inherent in parking at this scale more generally. But we're going to walk through the specifics of that right now.
So in addition to providing ample parking for the residents, on one hand, on the other hand, we also wanted to focus on reducing traffic and parking demands of our tenants. And a big focus of that is through the concierge services that will be available 24 hours, 7 days a week. We have large package rooms that are going to be equipped with freezers and refrigerators. So a lot of people, if they're a busy resident working at the hospital, can order their groceries on Instacart, saving the need for it. There's also going to be a lot of different modes of transportation available. We're going to have zip cars that are ride shares available that live in the building. There's going to be scooters. There's going to be double the required number of bicycle spaces in the building because it's a very bikeable area. It's a very walkable area. Operationally, we're also not bundling the units with parking. So people can rent the unit without renting. And that lets us get closer to the actual parking needs than dictate that there just be one parking space for everyone. It also takes into account the fact that parking garage with size, there's always going to be some people that are out of state. They have their car in the shop. They're not using their parking space for whatever reason. So it becomes available for other residents, which decreases the demand in terms of the absolute number of spaces that are required. We do have a lot of tandem spaces, which we have seen at other projects works well for people living within the same unit that need 2 spaces. But we also do have this concierge on site. So if there is a need to increase parking beyond that, you have people from different units use tandem spaces that can be facilitated with concierge who acts in that capacity as a relay at that point.
On parking, it's my understanding that you're working with a professional parking consultant. Can you just identify them for the board's sake and sort of this input that they've had in your present layout?
So we work with parking consultant Desmond. A lot of what we focused on, 2 things really was parking generation, how to mitigate it and how to quantify it. And secondly, on the layout and design of the parking structure. And if you were to look back at our first CPC submission prior to their engagement, it is drastically different layout in terms of parking. And here in this most recent version, with their guidance, we focused really on 90-degree parking, which is the most efficient way to park cars. And they helped us size the drive aisles and the spaces and entry. And we also discussed with them ways to mitigate parking generation, but also ways to potentially accommodate more parking if needed.
I want to do 2 quick questions on that front. We've talked about unbundling parking, but just to kind of get it very crystal clear on the record, the way I understand it is working is if someone for the unit doesn't need parking, but they don't need to lease it, they have savings for that, right? So people that are choosing to live a park-free lifestyle, if they attract savings by living in this building, and that still frees up in theory a space for someone that does want parking. Is that roughly what we're talking about?
That's absolutely correct.
And so then the other thing that you just talked about is arranging the size of the parking spaces and the size of the drive aisles with a parking expert. One of the things that were presented this evening as sort of in our efforts to meet the conditions of the previous dimensional adjustment approvals is an additional, it was almost 100 non-zoning compliant parking spaces. So these are parking spaces that are somewhere in between compact spaces and standard spaces. If you could just talk us through a little bit of the details of what that means, that they're dimensionally smaller, but do they still function for cars?
That's a really good point, and a point that's really important for us, because to be a zoning compliant space, you have to be 18 feet long. And this lot is incredibly narrow. So if you have rows of cars that are all 18 feet long, not the cars themselves, but the parking spaces, we run out of rows and we're not able to adequately protect the building. But most cars are not 18 feet long. So you can design a spot that is between compact, which is 7.5 by 15, which is tight. We have compact spaces, we have tenants complain about that. But there's a lot of room between those two. And something that's 8 by 16 is very comfortable. And I can tell you that that's something that, we've tested out ourselves to basically see what the tenant experience would be like. And that's something that's been supported also by the parking consultants. So we really tried to avoid any spots that were narrower than 8 feet. I think we have maybe 3 that are 7.9. And the width is generally more important than the depth, where you don't really want to go below 8. You don't need the full 8.5 to be comfortable.
Wanted to just check in, Bob, on perhaps 2 more points. The first is just being at the end of this transit corridor and having this on-site concierge. If you just kind of address what that does in your perception on traffic. Then additionally, I think our unit count is at 355. I think we talked about other iterations of the plan. I think our study may have been done based on a larger unit count than that, but just wanted to really focus in on the transportation corridor and the on-site concierge.
Yeah, I think rather than the unit count, the more appropriate gauge of traffic is number of parking spaces you have. So and even if you do have a certain number of parking spaces, the fact that you do have such good bike connections, you do have such good RIPTA connections. Even if you do have parking spaces, people are going to tend to use those alternative modes of transportation. So our traffic study, the volumes generated by it are probably considerably high, if anything, because people are going to move to this area because of the amenities that are provided and that they don't have to drive.
That's great. Thanks. Mr. Chairman, we'd be happy to answer any sort of on the parking topic right now. I don't know if there are any follow-up questions for either the owner or the expert.
You aren't asking for relief on bike spaces, you're complying, correct?
Yeah, we are compliant. No request for relief on bike.
Any other questions on
I
traffic?
have just a couple quick parking questions. Mostly just, wondering if you spoke through or you talked through these things with your parking consultant. The first is, it looks like you have accessible van spaces on the second floor of the parking area. And those seem to require like something like 3 or 4 steps to get up to the elevators. So I'm just wondering about the rationale there. I'll just wrap off a couple. And
Sure.
the second question was, it kind of looks like the van some of the accessible parking spaces look narrower than the compact or the standard parking spaces, and so that just is a little surprising to me. And then the last question I had was about height of the parking area. Certainly no, I'm not trying to grow the building anymore, but I think just trying to understand, like, it looks like you have something like 7 feet in that lower parking area at points. And so if you could just speak to that, about where that transition in height, how much height you think.
I can, I think it would be helpful to pull up if I can find one. So I'm gonna start actually with the bottom image because it's a little bit simple. So the clear height there is 7 6. It does not accommodate accessible van. The upper floor, there are two different data. On the left, the garage finished floor is 2 feet less than the lobby elevation, and on the right, it's the same. On the left, there is, if you look at the green path of travel, a ramp that ramps up to the lobby. And in a more recent iteration, it is being replaced with a hydraulic elevator that services just the parking to lobby level. But there is a ramp on this drawing. So there is an elevation change and access being provided by it. The handicap spaces, the typical spaces, they are narrower than a standard space. And some of these standard spaces are slightly more. The handicap spaces are 8, but they have the 5-foot drive aisle share them. And then the van accessible spaces are, they have much larger spaces. They're 16 feet altogether, including the accessible area. And then the head height, because the parking field on the left is lower than the lobby, has a clear head height of around 12 feet, and on the right it's 10. So more than enough to accommodate it.
Any other questions on parking or traffic management? Before we go into another subject, would you mind horribly if we take a 5-minute break?
No,
There are a few commissioners that are looking at me like they need to take a little break. So we will it is 6:49. We will come back at 6:55. We'll take a short 5-minute break. commissioners are back, so we will call this meeting back to order. We'll let the applicant continue with what looks like environmental impact.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, so, the one note on environmental impact, that I think is interesting, and this may be a little bit more of the team here being really focused and interested on, but there are some choices about building materials and the fact that it's an all-electric building, and if we could just touch on that briefly, because I think that's what's fascinating, the CLT, the young growth, the all-electric building.
Absolutely, I'll keep it brief. Yeah, so, this is a building of the future. We want this to be something that's forward thinking, not just in its aesthetics, which we're aiming for. But in terms of its construction and its infrastructure, this is a fully electric building. Yeah, we're imagining heat pump, heating and cooling, high efficiency systems, but not only just the infrastructure, but the actual DNA of the building, the actual the setup of how it's structured. We're going to be using cross laminated timbers for those of you who aren't aware. It's essentially it's a little bit like playing with Legos, right? You create these massive blocks that are thin slabs, and that is your structure. It's your floor, it's your structure, and it's your ceiling. So rather than having a joist system where you have, beams carrying joists, carrying subfloor, carrying finished floor, you literally have a thin slab that gets craned into place and it clicks together. I'm specifically interested in this. I did my graduate school thesis on this topic years ago. It's something that I think is going to be really coming by storm to the building industry. Other countries, Canada, many European countries are embracing this sort of building method. I'd say it's still pretty cutting edge and new here in the States, but it's something that we're deeply invested in our firm and in learning more about. We've hosted different professionals on the topic in our studio to teach us about it so we can learn about it. Essentially, you take very young growth wood, you harvest it, and you're not having deforestation issues of taking down large growth trees. You're taking young growth harvested trees, and you're creating these building systems, and that drastically reduces the carbon footprint for this building. Something like 75%, and I might have the exact percentage wrong, but it's somewhere in that range of the entire planet's urban carbon footprint is dedicated to the building industry. So we have to do better, right? And that's what this building methodology is aimed at doing. So that's what we're really trying to do. And it also is much more fire resistant, it makes for a safer building because it's so massive relative to having all these delicate members of trusses and joists and beams that can catch fire. So it's safer, it's much more energy efficient, and it's cutting edge. So we have a lot of ideas for this building, and we're putting them to task and putting them in our plans.
We have received a couple letters of interest from ostensibly environmentally affiliated organizations about building design. From what we've read from their letters, it's not 100% clear to me, but I believe their letters are based on the preceding design, and some of the specific requests that they've made are changes that have already been made. So I think the narrowing of the building to increase the width of the green area and specific requests for native vegetation. Kevin, if you don't mind just touching base briefly on that as well.
Yeah. So prior to this hearing, we did review that letter, and I think Dylan's absolutely right. It referenced most certainly the previous design. It actually referenced an article on the internet that I know familiar with, and it was of the prior iteration of this project. So I didn't get a chance to read it in full, unfortunately, because it was presented to me as soon as I arrived this evening. But every point that I saw, I believe, has been addressed, from narrowing the entire building's impervious presence dramatically, creating a lot more green space in the rear. The entire facade of the building has been reimagined. Height has been reduced. The points still were there. Yeah. So I think, the parking being visible. I believe that may have been one of the points. Parking being visible from the public way has been resolved as well.
One last note on this is there's, one of the challenges of all of these projects is there's a push and pull on many fronts where, we can't accomplish everything at all times. One of those examples is the people demand more parking, but then they get worried about the environmental impact. Those two things are always at tension with each other. The fewer cars you have on site, the more positive the site is in terms of environmental concerns. And we're very excited to be at the end of a transit corridor, multimodal, options, pedestrian access to grocery, biking access to downtown, RIPTA access to downtown, biking access to, really the up and down the entire waterfront. There's a lot that can be done at the building without being reliant on cars and sort of the negative environmental impact that vehicles. The fourth standard that we need to walk through are buildable lots, so that the land development does not create any lots that are not buildable. I don't know if we still have Peter. I
I'm
think
here.
just reiterating your point that there's no subdivision proposed, and then as proposed, the lots are buildable. Additionally, we did have VHB and GZA give their expert testimony on how the site functions in terms of stormwater management. There's no issues with buildability on that front. From VHB's perspective, there's no issues with buildability in terms of getting vehicles on and off the site to support the building. And we've also heard testimony from the applicant outlining how we're working with CRMC and how we have a preliminary determination, and RIDEM has also made an initial determination, neither of which have made a finding that the site can't be built upon. So based on RIDEM findings, CRMC findings, and the findings of our experts, the lot is certainly buildable. And lastly, street access. I think this is pretty obvious, but we can deal with it in additional detail as needed. But there's pedestrian access, there's bike access, there's access for standard cars, vans, loading, the whole shebang. We have a series of different entry points. And this is another area where in our last presentation and now we've improved site access from having more than one entry point on the site, so that it's kind of decreasing some of the challenges that can occur as a result of parking structure of this scale. So that does it for all the elements that we needed to show. That is the dimensional adjustments, both the findings on how we comply with dimensional adjustments in general. Secondly, and how we comply with conditions of the dimensional adjustments issued in October of the past year. Each of the elements for the land development. There is a language regarding the recommended approval and from the EPD report. I would like to address some of the language in that approval, but when we get there, I don't need to sort of deal with that just yet. And then secondarily, Mr. Chairman, I would like to reserve the ability to be responsive to any additional questions or concerns from the public.
Well, I would like to know what you'd like to say about the staff report, but first, one other thing that I have about your package, the photometric plan that you provided, I can't read. As much as I zoom in, it's still blurry. I'm wondering if you could pull up yours and we could look at the lot lines and see what readings you have at your lot lines.
We can also, this is a reduced file size in order to make it function.
Yeah, see, if you zoom into that, you'll see nothing, which is what I see.
Wow, very different.
Yeah.
Crazy, yeah. Okay, I see.
You log in. We do have the full high res version, but we need to promote Dustin's computer as a panelist.
See where you're at.
I don't have it.
All right, while he's pulling that up, why don't you want to discuss your, would you like to talk about the staff report, your agreements and or disagreements with the stated
There's just one, I believe it is already in your packet. There's proposed conditions. We are largely in agreement with the conditions. There's one language requirement we'd be requesting to condition, number one. So as it stands today, it reads, the applicant shall submit all applicable state permits at the final plan stage. The applicant shall return to the CPC if approval of the permits results in a change to the site plan. I'm asking that we add the language that says, the applicant shall return to the CPC as may be required by the land development and subdivision review regulations if approval permits. So it's just that as may be required by the land development and subdivision review regulations. The reason why I'm making that request is there have been a series of decisions from the land court which have hung on single words like or the, and the level of specificity being sent back from the land court. I believe that it could be interpreted as it's presently written that any change at all to the site, for example, if we change a type of wood or a single type of plant, would require that we have to return to the CPC for a full hearing.
No, this is fair. Can you
Yep.
reiterate the,
Yep, we have
the
no
requested
objection.
language? And the staff says they have no objection to that language, but just so that I can get it on my copy, just so I have it.
It's on the-
So,
Oh,
I do
I
have,
have oh, it's in your packet.
no, it's a single sheet.
I don't think I got that.
There's a bunch of, if you want to unclip it. there's
Oh,
a
it's at
bunch
the
of-
back. Yes. All right, I'll see that.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. I do think we're ready to be promoted, which are
Okay, promote Dustin there.
everyone's always ready to be promoted.
I want to be demoted sometimes.
It's honestly when I daydream, it's about demotions.
Okay, we can read these now. Thank you.
Is there any specific part, or do you want me to zoom out?
I want to, slowly go around the property lines and just to see what kind of spill off we have, because that's where the regulations. I'm assuming these are all dark sky compliant. They look like from your fixture cut sheets that they are.
So I'll start at this corner.
Right away. Good second.
Right. This would be the lot.
Yeah, it's the lobby where all that spill off is, and that's going about halfway into the street is what? Is that what I see?
Just under halfway.
Okay.
This is.
So that whole walkway is lit as well. At least we can see it now. Thank you. Yeah, there were a few areas I was like, is this me? And then I tried to zoom in on it and I just couldn't make it out.
I have one more, building related question. Is that the end, or are we at the end of the presentation? Okay.
Yes.
So if you go back to, sort of like the ground floor plan, I guess it's sort of the second floor plan. I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about these skinny spaces? So I think in the initial presentations, having you talked about walk-ups and kind of the like stoop nature. Is that what's happening in these super skinny spaces? Okay, and And then the ones that don't have doors below because they're low down,
That's what
right?
section.
Yeah. And so those are residential units. How wide are they? They just seem sort of like,
12 feet.
okay. And they have sort of continuous windows according to your renderings on the street. What about these two on the spaces that taper all the way on the right?
Right next to the bike parking, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah, so, if you look at the rendered elevations, there's lots of glazing essentially that faces, I mean, these are. The most optimal forms of units to lay out when you have something that's long and skinny with lots of glazing along the long end. It ends up lending itself to just the best types of spaces. Obviously, I mean, I think the hardest thing to lay out, as you know, would be if you have light at the short ends of a rectangle, but not along the long ends. So there's so many ways to make these work on the inside for just nice programming.
even that triangle one.
I believe so, yeah. Where you walk in closet at the end.
So I think my general comment here, and I'm not trying, this isn't like a gotcha, like, comment, but I think where I'm struggling to understand this project is we have these pretty well-developed renderings, that show stoops and trees and, sort of like a sidewalk life. They seem to suggest sort of a more generous connection to the pathway that borders the back of the building. And I think, and because the plans are just floating and the site plans are kind of the roof plan and colored and in a different language, I think I'm just struggling to really understand the metrics of that space between the public right of way and the building face. And, I think by virtue of the fact that you're here, that's not maybe a requirement as a submission to really to have a plan where we really understand those two things together. But I think from a sort of public engagement standpoint and sort of having the neighbors understand what this is gonna look and feel like, I think there's something between these renderings, which, I know, and you guys know, you can make things look really nice in renderings, and then they can sort of not always work out exactly that way in plan. And I think there would be a lot of value in having some ground floor plan where we saw all of that sidewalk and building face material actually drawn.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're looking for might be more of a plan graphic than a elevation graphic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Those
it's
two
connecting
steps.
these to
Right there.
something that
Things like
we
that.
can read as like a.
Understood. Yeah, so I think certainly when, as we develop, further, that would be a graphic that will include it. And I think, perhaps, I think maybe what you're getting at is before we hurtle forward on like doing the construction document set, maybe start there.
Yeah,
And really make sure that experience is as lovely. And I think that it's starting to come to life in elevation here. And we've thought a lot about that, but I think the plan can.
And we do in fact have layouts for those units. So at any point in the project's evolution, you just stop at the point, is that what you have? And continue. So, this was submitted, some time ago. And we have, unit plans for, every single unit in the building. I can confirm that they work in their size to accommodate. Higher end rentals, but they're not being on the street as premium as the upper level you decide. If you know, little look at what's available and run, you would see that the spaces that they have that are townhouse along Friendship Street have the hardest, you know, difficulty renting. So these are sized to, you know, from a 2 by 2 units. Where you can imagine you walk into a open concept kitchen. The kitchen is open, and you have your living dining space with a stair going up. You have a landing right at the top of the stair, and then you have bedroom to the right, bedroom to the left. And one of those has an ensuite bath. So they lay out nicely as a 2 bed, 2 bath rental property.
Do you have the unit mix and average square footage for the units, since you have developed all of the floor plans?
The unit average square footage is 670 square feet. And the unit mix is, in like any development, it changes as it gets develops, right? Like, as we're having fire separation, it's impacting some standard units, but I can tell you that there are approximately 18% of the units are 2 bedrooms. With the remainder 1 bedrooms. There are no true studios, but there are, I would say, different tiers of 1 bedrooms where you have junior 1 beds that are smaller, around 450 square feet. And maybe they only have 1 vacay. Then there are the more traditional 1 bed that might be anywhere between 520 to 570 square feet. Then you have more premium 1 beds that go all the way up to 750 square feet. Then you have 2 bedrooms that are anywhere from 9 to 1100 square feet. So the units in this project are generously sized to be cohesive with what we believe to be will be the best in class experience, rental experience in Providence. And we've also managed to incorporate in most of the units some level of private outdoor space.
Thank you. That helps get the picture. I was worried when you said 670 square feet and you said mostly 2 bedroom, 2 bath units. I was wondering how that worked. But this makes a lot more sense now that you got into the details. Any general questions of the applicant? I can always reserve the right to do so later, but if not, we'll let Bob or Troy take over the stuff.
Thanks, commissioners, and we did go through the project. The applicant spoke about the design of the building, parking, site access, landscaping, as well as the environmental impact. So I think we can jump directly into the dimensional adjustments. They are seeking dimensional adjustments for height as well as parking. And they're looking for a 50% decrease in the parking requirement, as well as an adjustment for a height of approximately 90 feet over the 75 feet that's permitted by right in the zone. And the reason they're doing this again is because the design has changed fairly significantly since they were last here before you. So based on that, in conformance with section 10005B of the development review regulations, we do find that they are eligible for these requested adjustments through provision of open space set aside for public use, as well as provision of structured parking. The adjustments for height as well as parking are listed in section 1904E.2 of the zoning ordinance. And we do find that provision of public space as well as structured parking are reasonably related to the conditions that make them eligible for those adjustments. So based on that, we would recommend that you grant the adjustments, finding that they meet the criteria in 1904.E of the ordinance, and also by you having made positive findings in conformance with section 10.05B of the development review regulations. Moving on from there, this is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. This is in the waterfront mixed-use neighborhood designation, which is intended for residential and neighborhood uses, including multifamily residential. Provision of housing is in conformance with objective H2 of the plan. Multifamily development is permitted by right in the W2 zone. They will conform to the dimensional requirements subject to you granting the requested adjustments. And they submit a landscaping plan as well as a lighting plan. So as far as the environmental impact goes, they have submitted what's required, but will be subject to the city engineer's review prior to final plan submission. That would include the drainage plan, erosion control plan, as well as the traffic study. So again, we do believe that the applicant will be consulting with the CRMC after this. And so we are unclear if there are any restrictions to development, but as you will see, we do find, other than that, there are no constraints. And adequate vehicular and pedestrian access is provided from East River Street. So based on that, we would recommend that you approve the preliminary plan subject to these conditions. That they submit all applicable state permits at the final plan stage. And they shall return to the plan commission and with the added language as may be required by the subdivision and land development review regulations if approval of the permits results in a change to the site plan. The drainage and erosion control plan shall be subject to the city engineer's approval. The traffic study shall be subject to the traffic engineer's approval prior to final plan approval. And again, any required changes shall be made prior to the final plan submission. And any required encroachment permits shall be submitted at the permitting stage.
Okay. This point, we get to the point in every public hearing where we open it up to public comment. We do have a few letters that we've received that have been transmitted prior to the beginning of this meeting. We have a letter from the Audubon Society of Rhode Island. We have a letter from the Blackstone Parks Conservancy, and we also have a letter from an individual by the name of Thano Chautis. So just so that you know, if you're here to speak on these agenda items this evening, we have these. They are part of the record. We'd ask that you not repeat verbatim because they are a part of the record. But if you want to add anything or have any other comments for the applicant, we can take those now. So we had a sign-in sheet and we'll start with that. If you're joining us in the virtual room, please make sure to raise your virtual hand or press *9 to be ready when we are ready to call you. We'll start off with Carrie Drake, the first. Oh yeah, why don't you guys, sorry about that. Why don't you guys go and sit down and we'll call you back if we need you after the public comment. Yes, and every individual who wishes to speak, please sit at the table and speak into the microphone, just like we've asked everyone else to do so far this evening.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right.
Thank you.
While they're coming up, I'll start. My name is Carrie Drake. Excuse me, that was a long waiting. I'm president of the Blackstone Parks Conservancy, one of the groups that sent a letter. I'm here because one of the two parks we care for is right next to is adjacent to this proposed project, and we'll see major impacts. And so we've had a lot of questions and some concerns about that. We're advocates for this natural space, and so we're just concerned about the scale and the mass of this proposed project. I don't have planning credentials, but something that's relevant is that I've lived in a number of major cities, and I chose to move to Providence because of the appeal of a more balanced city with good natural spaces. It's also relevant maybe that before coming here, I lived in a building with as many units as this, and I'm well aware of all the coming and going of the delivery vehicles, the taxis dropping people off, just the comings and goings, the packages, all that sort of thing. It's a lot of activity, a lot. And in fact, I think when I just heard the new comments on the traffic study, I think that they should factor in all of these gig economy vehicles that will be bringing people packages, meals, and groceries to the residents. And I appreciate that this incredibly detailed analysis that they just gave. They're trying to fit a lot into a challenging site. I don't think anyone in the public has seen this yet. This is quite new to us, so maybe some of our questions have been already addressed, which would be, I think maybe the dark skies question has been addressed, which sounds great. It seems overall like they're asking for a lot of concessions and compromises that will negatively impact the park. And I'm not sure why we want to do that. Just two sentences about the conservation district. Probably some of you have been there. It's a zoned conservation district. That means it has special protections for people and for wildlife that restrict development and restrict activities and construction. Since it became a park, the first little parcel was from 1866. It's been sort of in equal measures abused and beloved. People used to swipe newly planted plants, and more recently they might throw a mattress or a TV into the park. But also people would love it and love walking in if they love the green space. I hear every time I'm there, almost someone saying, "Oh, I come here to exercise and it's so important for my mental health." There's people who fish daily along the river. We've done a lot to make this park healthier, and we've offered a lot of programs. Let me think. Our programs have drawn hundreds of people, and thousands come from all over the city frequently. We have a lot of things like bird walks that go along the road, along the river. We had a Spanish language fishing class also along the banks of the river. You can see why I'm thinking about traffic with programs like these. Safety is a big concern. Let's see. My experience of spending a lot of time in the park and adjacent to it, makes me maybe appreciate how tricky it will be for the bikes and the people to go along this site with the building snug up against the sidewalk, and bikes that come across the newly constructed bike entry, which will be right in front of this building. They won't be able to access the greenway, which I think sounded like it was more for people maybe than for bikes. But they'll be in the road, and imagine the cars stopping there. Back to the park, it's an important wildlife corridor for birds, fish, and other wildlife. I think you've seen those letters. And those are all really important development considerations. The bird safe design that I haven't heard about is wildlife friendly landscaping. Bird safe designs to reduce bird impacts. We're a migratory bird treaty city, which means we're part of one of a few in the United States to have this designation. And we don't really want to add to the 1 billion birds per year that get killed by striking buildings, do we? So a smaller building contributes less to that. We're also concerned about the environmental impacts of a massive building to the park. We know from our work in the park that the bluffs are pretty prone to erosion and runoff, and it sounds like they've worked a lot on this. We do see things like the paths that we've had do tend to have runoff. I mean, as we have increasing storms with increasing intensity, the old standards haven't really applied, and it seems going forward, there hasn't been as much play in the how do I put that? I guess we're just concerned that we'll have any stormwater systems designed to older existing standards is not going to adequately prevent runoff from a toxic contaminated soil into the Seekonk River, which is a federal water body, and there's a ton of migratory fish and birds that rely on that river. Excuse me. I think one of the last things is, as far as erosion control, the path that is along the riverside looks great, but I know runoff is always an issue with our paths, and I don't know if the path can't be put in because erosion and runoff is a great concern. Does the public lose access then? We are not opposed to development of the site. We know the developer has the right to do that, and personally, some of it seems exciting to me, but this particular project does not seem appropriate to the site. The mass and the scale are beyond. Is it still the same project we saw a year ago when last time we heard about it? It seems like a completely different project. I think I won't go on in the interest of time. Let me think one. That is most, I'll pass along to Deming, one of our board members.
Okay, Deming, Sherman, you are the second person on the sign up sheet.
I am. Good evening. My name is Deming Sherman. I live at 254 Irving Avenue, Providence, about a quarter of a mile from this site. I've lived in my house for some 45 years. I have driven along River Road and by this site. Frequently. The site has been a mess for as long as I can remember it, and I welcome development. But I do not think that this particular project is appropriate for this site. And I'll tell you what, I was the principal draftsman on the statement of Blackstone Parks Conservancy that you have, and I hope other members of the commission have. And I will just summarize the key points in my mind. In my judgment, this project is not in conformance with either the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan. Well, let me tell you why. The zoning of the site is W2 mixed use. It says in the zoning ordinance, the district is intended to promote balance among appropriately scaled residential and commercial development. Appropriately scaled. The district encourages compatible development with adjacent areas and surrounding residential neighborhoods, and enhances and creates public access to the waterfront as a public resource. This massive project is not compatible with the surrounding area. It overwhelms the commercial area to the south. It infringes on the pocket, approach on the park, but effectively infringes on the park, reasons that Carrie has stated. And it's simply, in my judgment, not appropriate development under W2. Furthermore, with respect to a comprehensive plan, which was fairly new and which took 2 or 3 years to prepare, and I was involved in that to some extent. I look at the comprehensive plan objective H2, which is the justification in the planning report, to say that the project was consistent with a comprehensive plan. The language with that H2 says that the objective is to produce new housing for all, to support the creation of new ownership and rental housing citywide at all price points. This is not affordable housing. This is going to be high-end housing. I don't think that just because it's housing necessarily means that it's consistent with H2. More important, you look at the buildings, the BE. Main objective BE2, BE shorthand for building or building environment. And it says to comply with this objective, yes, this is within the comprehensive plan. Housing, and there should be a provision for, I'm sorry. Plan objective BE2, which is entitled New Development and Traditional Character. It sets forth some strategies within the objective, including new development that quote complements Providence's traditional character and encourages developments to be compatible with surrounding usage while not stifling innovative design architecture. Again, compatibility, consistency with neighborhoods. This project does not meet that standard. So I look at this project from 40,000 feet. I'm gonna get mired in the details of this, that, and the other thing. Look at the comprehensive plan, look at what's encouraged in the comprehensive plan, and lay it up against this project. Project is too big. It squeezes too much on the small site. It has no view corridors in between. There could be several smaller buildings. And just overwhelmed the area. I've had some involvement with the site over the past 25 years, where there has been, when prior owner came forward on 2 different occasions, separated by a number of years, 4 projects on the site. And they did community outreach in a different way than on here. There's been no community outreach in Ward 2 that I'm aware. In any event, I met with the developers along with others several times, and they made changes that was satisfactory for them and satisfactory for the neighbors. We did that on 2 different occasions. We had no opportunity for that in this particular instance. So, without going into all the details and things like that, those are the reasons I think that this commission could defer judgment on this. Let developer go back and rethink some of what it's trying to do, and then come back with a plan that everybody can agree to. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person on the sign-in sheet is Martha Franco.
My name's Martha Franco. I live at 105 Chase Ave in the north end of the city. And I'm a volunteer in several Providence parks, and on the board of the Blackstone Conservancy. I have an environmental background and hold 2 degrees in that subject matter. What it seems to me like goes on with this proposal and the input that they've gotten from many people is that housing has trumped environment. And I don't think that works in this day and age, and it's very disappointing to me. We have to satisfy housing needs and be concerned with environmental impact beyond erosion control and stormwater, which in my opinion are not really problematical. I'm very confident that this team of engineers can manage the stormwater. This is not a big watershed to deal with. I don't think that's the environmental concern for this particular parcel. What I would say is, and no one has mentioned this around that I know of, is that if you look at an aerial view or you know this area, which I think most people do, there's a green corridor going from this parcel, ruined as it is by contamination, all the way up along north for a long ways. And it's a migratory corridor and it accommodates creatures, flora, fauna. And this property, which has the right to be developed for sure, is so filled with building and development that there's really not much left for environment. This is the environmental aspect of the parcel that concerns me, that its current function is right.
I'm taking notes on what you're writing,
I
man.
didn't think you could hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, its current function is going to be basically obliterated with a little bit of planting. And why? Because the footprint is really big. One thing I don't know, and it's a question, is on the plan, it says it provides a statistic for total green space. Question for you guys. On the first one, it says, the first plan that you saw in 1024, it says total green space 28,000. So you put that way.
We're not.
You know.
Ma'am, you can't, I'm sorry, excuse me, this is not the forum to go back and forth with the applicant. You have to state what you want to say now, pose any questions to the board. And then we can go back to the applicant and ask that at a later time.
And the current plan, total green space as 22%, 19,700 square feet. That's a significant reduction, and I think that's very disappointing. Especially because we had very little time to review this plan or understand it fully before we were sitting here. So again, I think housing is good. We need housing and all that, but that this building is just too big to accommodate the real environmental impact it's going to have, which is to take away the environmental corridor for regions. And, you know, like I said, in this day and age, we don't want to do that. So, that would be my request, that we consider a smaller footprint, unless I misunderstand. Another thing that I was curious about is the extent to which soil is going to be removed from the site. I know that there's been testing, and we know that there's a lot of contamination from the usual urban contaminants, lead, arsenic, flowing products, whatever. And so it's a concern to me that during the construction, there is a huge potential for runoff at that time into the river and airborne dust. And I hope that you guys will make sure that their plans are sufficient to control for those things, which would be, I think, also an enormous amount of truck traffic. Again, not that's something that I would say is a deal breaker at all. I'm not saying that, I'm just saying it's a worry that during the construction period, it will be very, very disruptive if a lot of material has to be removed from the site. So, you know, I hope that you will take seriously the need to provide as much natural kind of green space along the river as is possible, and that there be a permanent management plan with a professional in charge of that to make sure that the vegetation survives, because often it's challenged to keep it alive for an indefinite period of time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have someone else, so you guys can go back to your seats now. We have someone online now who would like to speak on this matter.
Yes, Sarah Gleason. Go ahead.
Thank you. You've clearly, the developer, I mean, has done very thoughtful work on creating the idea of a traffic concierge. And my question is, I don't know who the landlord of this project will be or the owner, but RIPTA bus service has been cut drastically due to lack of funding. And I think many of us need to speak up and have these routes restored, or rather the service restored. And because you are including RIPTA buses in your plan, I'm wondering if there's somebody involved there who would represent the development in talking with RIPTA in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's anyone else in our virtual room who wishes to speak on this matter, please raise your virtual hand or press *9. Oh, Grant, did you want to speak on this? Okay, grab the microphone. Okay, seeing no one else in the virtual room, we will go back to our physical room, and there is one additional person who didn't sign in.
I apologize for not having signed in. I apologize for not having gotten here to get to the meeting, and that's why I didn't sign in. Apologize for my mobility, which is why I didn't get here to the meeting. As my mom would say, it was probably the most wise person I ever met. Living in moderation. This does not even come close. I am shocked that we even consider something that is so overwhelming to the surrounding neighborhood. I would request permission. Tell the applicant. Scale it back. The maximum that they're allowed
is way more than what is in the surrounding neighborhood. There's no justification for going beyond what's allowed. I've been paying attention to land use in the city of Providence since I was a young adult. And I hate to acknowledge that was a half a century ago. We can do better than this. We should do better than this. We must do better than this. Please send it back. Tell them they can do better than this. They're all smart folks in this game. You know that they can do better than you. It's more responsibility and obligation to communicate that. I look forward to much better planning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else online who wishes to speak on this matter? See anyone else left in the physical room? And seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of this agenda item at this time. Just quickly, I'd like to go through a few discussion points that may help answer some questions or discuss what the applicant has requested. The first member of the public spoke of too many concessions. I just want to be clear on what we're discussing here. The applicant is asking for 2 dimensional adjustments, which we're allowed to grant, which we've already previously granted at a previous iteration of this plan, which is building height and parking. It seems like the parking would be in line with what the members of the public were asking for, which is, you know, less area. If they had to build out more parking, it would be probably more area of coverage, a lot of coverage. Contaminants around the site, that's kind of what I was getting at when we were talking about the petroleum and asking about the heavy metals on the site from the previous industrial uses. That's going to be an RIDM and CRMC jurisdiction. They're going to make sure that the contaminants do not flow. They won't be allowed to infiltrate if they have soil borings with contaminations. That won't be allowed by DEM or CRMC. Housing at all price levels is exactly what the comprehensive plan says. So it's not specific to affordable housing or other housing. So we discussed that. That's in the staff report even as one of the reasons that it aligns with the comprehensive plan. Environmental impact, as stated, this was a previously developed and previously impacted site. So there is environmental contamination. I would like to ask what the applicant is going to do if they're going to look for a no further action letter from DEM or what that process is going to look like. And if so, they're going to be cleaning up the site from an impacted site, which is very difficult to develop to a site that will be clean and better for the environment overall. See where else we're construction runoff and dust control is required at the building permit stage. They need soil erosion and sediment control plans submitted and approved by the building department, and you can call code enforcement if those are not followed throughout the building cycle. That's not something we look at this stage, but there are requirements and definitely bylaws that have to be abided by when someone constructs a building. The roof cuts, I have no idea on. I would like to hear from the applicant about that too. So those are two things. And I think this is something I said at the last meeting. We did get a letter of support also. That gentleman did not come today, but again, they submitted their support. There's not many lots around the city of Providence that could have this sort of development without impacting significantly either existing built environments, neighborhoods, or dramatically change areas of the city to accept this many built units. So I was intrigued by this the last time they were here. I'm still intrigued. But I don't. There's nothing there now. It's a previously developed site, so I don't think that means that it doesn't meet with the character of the neighborhood. It's just this is a developable site, and there should be something developed here. We talked about, I guess, Deming was involved with, or had spoken about 4 or so projects that were here in the past. I think that also is something that should be discussed. Is there's a lot of projects here that haven't come to fruition. I don't know if this one will or not at the end of the day, but this is a site that has been trying to be developed for some time, and it's not the easiest parcel to develop. That's for sure. But the applicant is here. I would like to hear from the applicant on at least those 2 issues and any other items. Yes.
Can I just add one more issue, which is we looked at the lighting plan in the break, and since then I've been thinking, can we clarify what are the actual requirements that they need to meet on lighting?
On runoff, on spill off?
Yeah, I don't have that part of the code in my head. We required them to have a plan, but I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think that is gonna have how much lighting is on that street and in the sort of green areas behind the building is gonna happen on the environment we see back there.
Yeah, in terms of lighting, the maximum allowable light level at any lot line is 1-foot candle, and no glare onto adjacent properties is permitted. Those are the standards.
And does the public way count as an adjacent?
We recognize that light from street lights and so forth are going to likely elevate that beyond that level. So it's more related to lot lines that are not public right of way.
Okay. And have we verified that the lighting plan meets this requirement? It's my understanding the lighting plan is fairly new.
It was 0 to 1 of the lot.
If I may, the specific lot line overlap is the southerly lot line, and it is all 0 along that. That's our ocean rule. That's the only lot line that is a private property, which is the newest building.
So if we were to add a condition about a compliant photometric plan to be submitted, that final plan, that would be acceptable to the applicant?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think just verifying that all cut sheets for fixtures are downward facing and minimizing light while creating life safety conditions at all levels.
I would almost say like an updated and legible photometric plan be submitted at final plan, an updated, fully compliant.
And I think the point here being that you want to be lighting all the pathways, the public pathway in the back, but that overlighting that back space is gonna have negative impact on that, environment.
Thank you, Sean. That's a good point. Chairman Conley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Specific to the question, in regards to DEM, we have an approved remedial, action work plan. We will be seeking, the no further action letter that you identified that would occur as a result of us completing that plan. So we would be following through on that. Specific to RIPTA, my understanding of the travel of RIPTA and the production of service that's related to, basically corridors that are not used as frequently as others. In general, that is not applicable to Providence, stops and locations as much as it is across the entire state of Rhode Island. And then more specifically within Providence in general, these transit corridors are already more shielded from that, even more so because ridership is relatively strong. I would say specific to what this project would do for RIPTA, this would be an anchor for RIPTA along that transit corridor. It would support RIPTA's continued service up and down this corridor. We're happy to have a commitment to make every effort to meet RIPTA and discuss this project with them. We can't really guarantee much more than our efforts on that front. We don't know what RIPTA will do, but we're very happy to commit to that. No objection to submitting a compliant lighting plan. There were a few points brought up from concerned citizens. I don't want to take up time unnecessarily, but I also don't want to disregard their concerns. I would like to try to move through them. The first one was really about the traffic in and out of the site. There was a comment about the gig economy. I thought that was interesting. I just want to have our expert talk about how he considers those sorts of traffic on the site.
Yeah, real quick, the traffic study was based on peak hour traffic volume. And typically a lot of the deliveries are done off peak during the day, during the evening. So those are when traffic conditions are lighter. So they're gonna operate, there are gonna be deliveries here, and they have a separate driveway which provides access to the loading and drop off area. So we don't see an issue with that.
Additionally, with the 24/7 concierge, it's not something that's common across Providence buildings generally. We do think we'll be able to manage that much better than an average building. We do have sort of storage and operational plans within our within the plan submitted. The identification of proximity to the conservation district. From a literal standpoint, we are about 300 feet away as the crow flies, and about 550 feet away as a pedestrian would walk. So we love it as a neighbor. We think it's a phenomenal asset to the site. I will say in the same way that the concerned citizens are neighbors of the Conservancy, I would anticipate that the people that would come to live in this building would join them and be some of the most ardent supporters and protectors of that conserved area. Central Park, for example, is probably one of the most supported parks in the entire world, and it's not because it's far away from big buildings, because people live near it and love it. And so proximity to people is a core component of a park space. The lots of concessions point, I think the chairman and the staff have outlined very clearly what we're asking for, what's already been granted and approved at this site. Stormwater runoff standards, I'll have our GZA just, for the sake of the record, identify one more time what level of concern you have about contaminants spilling out.
Sure. So the stormwater design for the site will be designed in accordance with city regulations, state stormwater regulations, as well as state environmental regulations. There's a remedial action work plan that will need to be approved by DEM for the site, and the stormwater system will be incorporated into that. If any areas that stormwater infiltration is proposed, those areas will need to be approved by DEM's Department of Land Revitalization and Management. Essentially, confirming that those are not areas where there's historical contamination hotspots. In addition, the site will be capped as part of the development, as part of the remedial action work plan. And what that means, there'll be either a pavement barrier or a clean soil barrier from the ground surface that prevents impact with contaminated soils that are buried in subsurface. Those caps would also prevent stormwater from coming in impact with contaminated subsurface materials. I believe there's also a good point about construction stormwater, so stormwater during the construction phase while the site's being developed. In compliance with both city and state regulations, there will need to be a sediment and erosion control plan submitted to the city of Providence and the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management / CRMC. And that plan will need to show methods to prevent stormwater from entering Seacon River or exiting the property in any other direction during the construction period. So the site developer will be required to maintain perimeter sediment erosion controls, that's things like silt fences, hay bales. Given the size of the site being just an acre, there may also be sediment traps incorporated in that plan. But both city and state regulations prohibit the discharge of untreated stormwater to the Seacon River or to neighboring properties over city streets.
One of the classic catch-22s of all these projects in presentations is you bring an initial concept, you're asked to make changes, you update the project, then someone will criticize the fact that the project has changed. So I do think that the project has changed from our initial proposal. And I do think that was the intent of the direction that we were given by this board. And our hope was that all these changes have been responsive to the concerns raised. One of those being the migratory pathway and amount of green space. I want to identify for the record that there's 71 feet between the furthest point of the building and the nearest point of the water, as far as we can measure on our plan set tonight. 71 feet is not an inconsequential amount of space. That's a good amount of green space, green buffer in between the river and the closest portion of the building. I would like to see if we can promote Peter Friedrichs. We had someone give a presentation regarding the comp plan. I don't know that they were an expert. Regardless, we want to go point by point with their concerns on the comp plan. I have also brought on screen our expert Peter Friedrichs' notes. As to the comp plan, we cite other sections of the comp plan, not just H2, but there's several here. I'm actually, Peter, if you could kind of walk us through the letter that was submitted that discusses the comp plan, I think that'd be excellent.
Yes, thanks for having me back. So it was a little hard to hear some of the in-person public comment, but I do have a copy of the letter that the Blackstone Conservancy submitted. I've been on the other side of these things. As an objector, it can be a challenge. And just frankly, they don't meet the requirements here. It's a straightforward job of the commission. There's evidentiary standards that have to be met, and if those standards are met, the commission is required to vote accordingly. And in this instance, we've got the comp plan up on the screen. The letter is not conforming to the approval process, but that first paragraph there that's titled comprehensive plan, in the middle it talks about zoning, and it equates terms between compatibility and consistency. For this project, it's not a variance. We don't look at intent of the zoning ordinance. It's strictly the requirements of the zoning ordinance, the literal requirements. And as I mentioned, with the adjustments, those requirements are met. The analysis ends there. We don't need to be talking about intent. Looking at the actual language, or just one more point about that. This is a land development project, and the CPC earlier tonight adopted some amendments to the regulations for land development projects and subdivisions. As we all know, that's been modified by the state legislature the last few years. Two of the things that they did is they required land development projects a couple years ago statewide, and they also required that when public access is provided, incentives must also be provided. the city of Providence has chosen to provide these incentives, and the applicant has the absolute right to take advantage of those and apply for those. It has met the requirements of approval tonight. And then speaking to the comprehensive plan, as I mentioned, there's those more than a dozen specific elements that we met. And also the applicant's not required to bat 1,000 here. They have to overcome any inconsistencies, and that absolutely has happened. The applicant is not the only person implementing the Providence Comprehensive Plan. That's the job of many folks throughout the city and beyond. And this is one project that will move that plan forward in a positive way. And just lastly, about environmental impacts, which is a final plan requirement. This is not a greenfield. This is a site that was previously developed and is contaminated. And it's the property right next to it is on the water, directly on the water. And to the extent that any green space in that corridor is lost, it's a single digit percentage, and there hasn't been sufficient evidence that that's a significant impact.
Thank you. There was an argument that there has been insufficient opportunity to meet with the developers. This is the fourth public opportunity, fourth advertised public opportunity. 2 specific community events that were promoted by the councilor of Ward 2. Ward 2 was identified as being insufficiently addressed. I would reach out to the preceding councilor in that regard. We work directly with that councilor to try to communicate all of that. So both Ward 1 and Ward 2 councilors were associated with promoting this. The affordable versus high end, this is something I care deeply about. There is a phenomenal study from the Minneapolis Fed, which shows that for every high-end unit that reaches a marketplace, you create 7 affordable vacancies through the chain of migration. Basically, every time someone moves into a nicer unit, they leave a less nice unit behind, which allows someone else to move into that nicer unit, relatively speaking. And so within a matter of a few years, you created a series of affordable housing opportunities. I think one of the most important portions of the comp plan, as the chairman specifically identified, is that more housing of all kinds and types, all housing of all affordability levels, it doesn't complement each other. Every single time you create higher end housing, you are derivatively and indirectly creating what's called naturally occurring affordable housing. There's a phenomenal section in the city of Providence's housing affordability study, which specifically identifies naturally occurring affordable housing as an essential component of the city's development plan. On the environmental concerns, I think we've sort of walked through those. The total green space is significantly more than is required from zoning. There is a lot of green space in the area more generally. In soil removal, well, our expert has also addressed how those concerns are managed through the soil sediment control plan. I try to be quick, but I didn't want to be too quick. So if there's something that I've kind of skipped past, I'm happy to go into more detail. Other than that, I would say the applicant has submitted credible evidence on the record on all the elements necessary for approval.
Thank you. All right. So I've got photometric plan that I can't read up on my screen. I have to delete that out. I mean, this is a big project. This is a project that, unlike we've ever seen. I think the last time they were in front of us, the general consensus was to give them a little runway and see what they come back with. I'm interested to hear what my fellow commissioners think of what they came back with. Obviously, we know the criteria. We can discuss those a little bit more. We've talked about the criteria required for approval. The applicant did put on a presentation to show that they meet the conditions, for approval, but I'm intrigued to hear what the other commissioners say.
I think we will probably all agree that it is an improvement from the previous iteration. A lot of things were taken into account. The fact that parking did not come up in any of the testimony tells me that at least that part was satisfactory. So we're looking at height and then also the impact on the conservatory and the natural life there. Also, I did want to make a comment, 'cause I think Peter talked about that by providing, some of the amenities that we must, make these adjustments, and just want to make clear in the language. They're eligible and we may provide those adjustments, but that's not a requirement. I know that it was previously approved, but the fact that you're coming here with enough changes that require you to come here does give us the responsibilities to look at the full project and make a decision going forward, so.
Which is why we have to look at them and reaffirm our, I mean, it's basically it's a new application, so that we need to make the findings again and grant the dimensional adjustments again. Yeah, the parking, we granted 50% reduction, and then they came back with some stacked parking. There's a lot of parking. I don't know how it's gonna work, but if they have a parking consultant, I just don't know how it's physically, like, in practice going to work, but we'll see.
If I just add, I think if we are to move towards approval, I think one thing to consider, and I'm not a professional in this space, but listening to some of the testimony and the conservatory next to it, I don't think it's even a heavy lift for the applicant, but in their landscape management, if they can consult with the conservatory and or engage any consultants that need be, to see if there's any impacts that need to be mitigated. I think it's an easy lift. You talk about how many feet it's away from the water, the 500, you mentioned 500, some 350 feet, I think, from other elements. So it may not even apply, but I think it will be a good gesture to engage as best you can.
If I may suggest, we'd be happy to review the site conditions with the city forester. They may be the best person to sort of address the conservancy, the water, the city's concerns more generally. It's a party that we've worked with on other sites. We have a good working relationship with them. If that met your need, we'd be very happy to commit to coordinating the site with the city forester.
If they submit a compliant landscape plan, we don't need the approval of the city forester, but we can request it, right?
You can. You can, and the forester would, I'm sure, be happy to advise on tree species selection and location.
So something like the applicant shall coordinate and request advice from the city forester on an updated landscape plan, which shall be submitted at final plan. Okay. Noel, have any thoughts on this one?
I think we worked through it last time a lot, and there's a lot of other people looking at it to the RFP.
Yeah, I think the biggest next step is definitely CRMC. They're gonna go through it with a fine tooth comb based on their regulations, which are slightly different than ours.
Which is well, a lot of the environmental issues
Right.
are there. Really far with that.
Yep.
It is big.
It is.
But it's
it could be a game changer. Talk about that. This is more than double the amount of approved housing units that, based on last stats, year to date, we've approved. No,
It's not.
No,
no, you're right. Charlotte, any thoughts?
I sort of said my thoughts. I this isn't that's a study I think that
And the interior.
yeah, I guess this also speaks to your point, Dylan. I mean, I think the green spaces on the site will be cared for if the building occupants feel connected to those green spaces. And I think if the building feels like it's something on a pedestal that's up high over top of the green spaces, it won't, it's not that it's a big building next to a green space. The two somehow, the occupants need to feel connected to that space.
Sid, anything? Any further comments?
I think that what I see is that they listened and came back with something that really took, I don't think it was generated by AI. It looks like it took a lot of effort and thought to take into account the public comments and the people that they met with in the neighborhood. I think the new design of the building is actually much more consistent with the area than what the first design was. And I appreciate all of the effort that they're putting into with the sustainability and those kinds of building elements. So I know that it's big, but we're a city and, a city is big and has big stuff. There's no city I've lived in big cities, small cities, big cities, everyone has a big building. And if we're gonna grow as a city and attract people to live here, to open businesses here, to patronize businesses here, we have to put people somewhere. And I think that a development that is this intentional is the type of place that we need to really give credit to putting people in. So, we can't just keep Providence small buildings forever. We've got to grow. And I think that's part of the comprehensive plan as well. So I think that this is, and as many people have said, there's not many footprints where you can put something like this in the city of Providence. We're very landlocked. And the site's been contaminated, empty forever. I mean, at some point we've got to move forward and see what works. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into redoing this and the time. And yeah, so I look forward to seeing how it all comes out.
Okay, thank you very much, commissioners, for your thoughtful input on this. I think the next step would be to look at the dimensional adjustments again that we granted on the previous iteration of this plan. we're asked to look at this again and make the findings again. Because the plan has changed so significantly. They're back in front of us and we want to make sure that we are using the correct criteria to, even though we previously granted these. So the applicant is requesting for a dimensional adjustment for a 50% decrease in the parking requirement. Again, they're listening to us, but because they're offering more parking than just that, but which is what we requested. And then an adjustment for a height of 90 feet. So the conditions or the criteria for a dimensional adjustment, as the applicant stated on the record, their professionals did a good job of discussing the criteria, that the applicant is eligible for dimensional adjustment because it meets one or more of the criteria in section 1904E1, because of both the open space, as we discussed, and the structured parking, which we discussed at length. Those are the two criteria that they're using to as their eligibility for that under section 1904. The request for the adjustment is within the allowable adjustments of section 1904, and that is true. We've went through that as well. And then the extent for the adjustment is reasonably related to the condition that makes the project eligible for the dimensional adjustment. The height and the parking, both, as the applicant stated on the record, are a directly related to those adjustments. So if we were so inclined, we could put forward a motion based on that the applicant meets the criteria for the dimensional adjustments in 1904E of the ordinance, having made those positive findings in conformance with section 1005B of the DRR, based on testimony, submitted materials, and the discussion that we had this evening. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll go around and do a vote. Noel? Aye. Charlotte?
Aye.
Sid?
Aye.
Miguel?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Make sure. So then we move on to the preliminary plan, which is the main approval that the applicant is requesting this evening. Now that we have brought this into zoning conformance, that we again would be voting on the preliminary plan to, if we so choose to approve it, it would be based on consistency with the comprehensive plan, as stated on the record and by the applicant's testimony, compliance with the zoning ordinance now that we have approved the dimensional adjustments, that the environmental impact, the drainage erosion control plan, traffic study shall be subject to the city engineer's review, but they will comply, and that it's a buildable lot, knowing that the next step of this is CRMC approval, and street access will be provided on River Street and the surrounding arteries. So if we were to push forward a motion for approval on this, I would suggest that we make it subject to the conditions listed in the staff report with the requested modification that the applicant shall submit all applicable state permits at the final plan stage. The applicant shall return to the CPC as may be required by the land development and subdivision review regulations if approval of the permit results in a change to the site plan. Number two, that the drainage plan shall be subject to the city engineer's approval prior to final plan approval. Number three, that the traffic study shall be subject to the traffic engineer's approval prior to final plan approval. Any required changes shall be made prior to final plan submission. 4, any required encroachment permits shall be submitted at the permitting stage. 5, again, these were where we added some in our discussion. An updated, fully compliant lighting plan shall be submitted with the final plan that includes cut sheets and dark sky compliant fixtures. Number 6, the applicant shall coordinate and request advice from the city forester on their landscape plan, which shall be finalized and submitted with the final plan. And number 7, the applicant shall continue to refine the ground floor and site plans to better negotiate between the public realm on all sides of the building and the interior use of the building,
Yeah, interior spaces.
interior spaces of the building. And updated plans shall be submitted with the final plan. That's what I have.
Did you make, or we should amend the additional?
Yeah, I did that. I read that. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I read that verbatim.
So move.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Both.
Sid seconded. All right, we have a second. We'll go around any discussion before we take a vote. Seeing none, we'll go around and do a voice vote. Noel? Aye. Charlotte?
Aye.
Sid?
Aye.
Miguel?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Good luck now.
Best of luck. This
Thank
is a project that will need it, I believe. With that, that is the last agenda item. All right. Take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? Happy holidays, everyone. We will see you next year.
Here.
We off?